From 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Whether you're watching us in Holyhead in North Wales, whether you're listening to us in Norwich in Norfolk, maybe you're watching us on YouTube on the Isle of Skye in Scotland. Wherever you are, you can take us with you.
You certainly can. You can also catch up via the GB News app if you're heading out today. You could be, as we're hearing yesterday from a lot of you, a Brit abroad.
Lucky thing.
Oh, it's quite nice.
Especially for somewhere warm.
Because the weather's so horrible here.
It really is. It's miserable and it is January-ish, I suppose. What else can you expect?
Yeah, no, this is true. We shouldn't moan, really. Coming up this morning on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
There's pressure on the Prime Minister. Well, it's building as more Tory MPs call for a criminal investigation into Partygate. We'll get the latest.
The former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, has urged Labour to use this opportunity to retake the centre ground. We'll ask one of his advisers in government if another split in the party is on the horizon.
And first aid arrives in Tonga after a devastating volcanic eruption that affected 84% of its population.
Don't forget, we want to hear from you this morning. It's crucial to what we're talking about. GBviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBnews. Love the fact that famous people have got everyone's attention.
We were beginning to talk about this yesterday at the end of the programme, so we thought we ought to get going on it again early, as it is now on a Sunday morning. But everybody has somebody that they are a bit knocked out to meet, a famous person. So it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business yourself. Sometimes there are people you just think, oh, pinch me, I've actually met that person. And so we were asking everybody if you've got a lovely story of somebody you bumped into and they turned out to be famous or whatever. Yeah. Did it give you a thrill? Did they live up to expectation?
I quite like that a lot of the ones we've got in so far are sort of, people from the silver screen and the sort of slightly older generation, which is nice. And that's when stars really were
stars. Oh, yes.
Howard in Cardiff got in touch and said, morning, I met Stanley Baker in 1969. A prolific. He was in so much stuff with Diana Dawes and all the rest of it. He came to my house to meet my mother and father.
I wonder why.
I don't know. Half the street came out to see who'd arrived in a huge car. He quoted passages from the Bible with ease, and I was spellbound.
And that's something about these very old-fashioned stars. They always drove big cars, didn't they? Usually rollers. Back in 1966, says David, I was travelling in the south of France with two friends and our van broke down and we'd run out of money. Luckily for us, the film star David Tomlinson. Now, he is Mr. Banks in Mary Poppins, isn't he? He was staying in the same place and he came to our aid, finding us part-time jobs with some of his friends. He was very friendly and open, and we enjoyed a month in his company playing football on the beach with his three sons.
That's quite something, isn't it? A bit more up-to-date from Steve, who said, I briefly met Lee Mack and Sean Locke in the House of Commons. Lee was instantly funny. Bet they were, actually. He's king of the one-liners, Lee Mack. And Sean Locke, God rest his soul, he passed away not so long ago. I used to love him on 8 out of 10 Cats.
But those people, I think, they can't stop cracking jokes. They just love humour and they love entertaining, and it never stops. Hi, this is from Roger. Hi, Roger. I went to the same school as Tommy Steele. Our class went to see him at I used to love Tommy Steele. Our class went to see him at the Old Vic in the Goldsmith play, She Stoops to Conquer. We met Tommy in the pie and mash shop. Where else? He took us all backstage and introduced us to Peggy Mount. Do you remember Peggy Mount?
I know the name.
Yeah,
legendary. And Mike met Gordon Banks. My club had a charity day with Gordon Banks. He was our guest of honour. I was paired with Gordon and spent the day in the golf buggy with one of the nicest blokes I've met. He met everyone with a warm smile. I'm 76 now and remember that day and that he was a hero to me.
You remember that save
as well.
He was legendary. I mean, all of those footballers from the 1966 World Cup, they were legendary.
See, I used to when I worked elsewhere, and I used to see people when I was coming off there. I used to see people in the makeup room who were going on to do sports channel sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And used to meet all these sort of footballers and things. But not being very sporty, I didn't know who half of them were.
No, I don't. But I did know, in the end, you get to know the 1966 World Cup squad. There are very few of them now left, sadly. I worked a lot with Jimmy Greaves, who, of course, was... which was wonderful. But, those were the days. I remember the 1966 World Cup. Oh. I know. My best friend, her dad was a football referee.
Oh, wow.
And so he invested that year in a colour television. And that was the first colour television on our block, for miles around. That was the first colour television.
Wow.
And they watched all of the lead up to the 66 World Cup on the colour telly.
So actually, 66 for a colour telly was early, wasn't it?
Well, I think it cost an absolute fortune, but he was such a football mad person that's the entire neighbourhood came round to watch the final.
I bet they did.
All on this one quite small colour TV. There you go.
To look into the good old days.
So let us know though if you've happened upon somebody, if you've met somebody really famous that it just gave you one of those little shivers up the spine. Love to hear your story. GBviews at GBnews.uk.
Yeah, and if you've got a photo with them as well.
That would be brilliant.
Now, technically, it is the start of a new week for the Prime Minister, but it looks like the next few days are going to be as difficult, if not more so, for Number 10.
Yeah, the report into Partygate by Sue Gray should be released this week, and it's likely to add more pressure on Boris Johnson.
Well, meanwhile, there's now the emerging MP intimidation scandal, and one Tory member, Martin Vickers, is now claiming that some sort of prosecution should be considered. Well, the Metropolitan Police says it's waiting for the publication of the Sue Gray report before taking any further action.
Well, joining us now is Norman Baker, former Lib Dem Home Office Minister in the coalition government of 2010 to 2015. Do you remember it? A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hello, lovely to see you. What are you making of this at the moment? Where do you think it's going to go?
I think it's extraordinary. I mean, irrespective of anything else, this story has just snowballed. I think we're up to 15 different parties now, and no doubt more to come. Sue Gray must be rewriting her report every couple of days as more information comes forward. It never seems to end. And we've now got the situation where Tory MPs are alleging matters are ones which need to be referred to the Metropolitan Police. You haven't mentioned, but Nus Ghali, the MP for next door Wealdon, where I am in East Sussex, is now alleging that she was discriminated against because of her Muslim background. So these allegations are in open against their own government are just quite extraordinary.
Pointing out that the chief whip, who these allegations by Nusrat Ghani she's making against, he denies those vehemently and says that they could be defamatory. So we've got to bear that in mind. However, the fact that Tories are now sort of piling on the pressure, I mean, is this a real sense, you think, that the backbenchers really want him to go?
Well, clearly a large section of the Conservative Party in Parliament does want him to go, and it's been very open about that. And, you know, there's been rumbles in parties before, my party and the Labour Party, in the Conservative Party, but I can't ever recall a time when it was as open as this and as forceful as this. And the Prime Minister is basically a dead man walking, as far as I can see. And he's waiting for something to happen. But even if Sue Gray-Porter's is not as damning as people think it will be, and even if somehow he scrapes past this, I mean, he can't carry on, I don't think, in this way. He's now been very whole below the waterline. And if you look at the opinion polls, I mean, he's now got a poll rating worse than Jeremy Corbyn.
So do you think it's really not a question of if, it's more when he'll go, even if, as you say, the report isn't as damning as they're predicting?
I think he's going to have to go. I mean, all these allegations are there. And if you think about it from a Tory MP's point of view, all these allegations, all the things that have been said, all the Partygate information that's come out, can all be played back in opposition leaflets and opposition broadcasts all the way through to the next general election. And do the Tories really want to go to the next general election with all this being replayed indefinitely? I don't think so. I think the Tory MPs, from my perspective, seem to have lost confidence in Boris Johnson, even the ones who are favourable to him. And they want a new start, I imagine. And probably, from their point of view, the sooner the better.
There may be a lot of people watching, though, who are Tory voters who are going to say, Norman, and let's be frank, they're not going to take any advice from a Lib Dem, because you've changed your leaders more often than a library book at times.
Well, I mean, I'm not particularly here as I'm a Lib Dem, but I'm not here in that capacity today. I'm here almost as an objective observer of events, and I'm just telling you how I see it. And yes, we've changed our leaders and so the Labour Party over the years, but I don't ever recall the animosity, the unpleasantness, the open revolt which we're now seeing in the Tory party anywhere else. Even when you're Jeremy Corbyn as Labour leader, you didn't see this level of hostility. It's just quite extraordinary.
And it's very unedifying, isn't it? I wonder what it's doing to public confidence in ministers,
yes,
in MPs at all. It seems as though nearly everything, and you're calling for an inquiry because it looks like very, very dodgy behaviour. How are we meant to have any faith in our leaders, in our MPs after this? Well,
it's doing a lot of damage to the government, there's no doubt about that. No doubt it's doing damage to the image of Westminster generally and to the image of MPs. And it's very unfortunate because there are many MPs in all parties, including the Conservative Party, who are there just getting their head down and doing the best they can for their constituents. And they're all tarred with the same brush. But I'm also concerned that what this is doing to our reputation abroad. It's already been badly affected, in my view, by the introduction of Brexit. We've now got a situation where we look like a laughingstock across some of the world. The headlines in the American press about what's happening here, so-called Partygate, are very damaging to our image abroad. And this is a tough time for our diplomats, I imagine, in the Foreign Office. OK, Norman Baker, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you. It raises a valid point about what people make of us abroad, but whether that matters in the short term.
I don't know. I mean, last weekend, didn't we? We interviewed somebody from America who said, because they'd been listening to our programme before they came on air, and she said it's actually quite reassuring to know that it's not just my country that's going through these political wars all the time. So there you go. Yeah. It's not just this country, is it?
It's not. No, it's not. Look, it's 12 minutes past 6. If you're heading out today, don't forget to take us with you, because you can pop us on your radio when you head out the door. These are the headlines today. US police have confirmed that the stray bullet which killed a British astrophysicist in Georgia had travelled less than 100 yards and through an exterior wall. Dr. Matthew Wilson from Surrey was found with a single gunshot wound to the head in an apartment last Sunday. Brookhaven police say the death is random and there have been no arrests so far.
The chairman of the Royal College of GPs says compulsory vaccinations for NHS staff in England is not the right way forward and is urging the government to delay the vaccine deadline. Martin Marshall told the BBC apparently that it could lead to workforce shortages as staff refuse the jab. And this comes as health workers protested against the mandatory jabs in London yesterday by laying out their uniforms on the steps of Trafalgar Square.
Britain has accused the Russian president of plotting to install a pro-Moscow leader as head of government in Ukraine amid tension over a possible invasion. In an unusual move, the Foreign Office named a former Ukrainian MP as a potential pro-Kremlin candidate to take over in Kiev. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said the Russian plotting showed the lengths which the Kremlin was prepared to go to undermine the government in Ukraine.
And the oldest working cinema in the UK has reopened. The Electric Cinema in Birmingham, under new management, has opened again after more than a year of continuous closures, of course, because of COVID. The new owners say the pandemic was the biggest existential crisis the industry had faced. I love that, the Electric Cinema.
Yeah, it does sound very old-fashioned. You like a movie, don't you?
Oh, I love movies, yeah. Yeah.
You go to like a bog standard cinema or a fancy one?
No, well, I go to one of those. That's a bit fancy, so that you can you can have a cocktail while you watch the movie, and they'll even bring another one to you if you say, "I'll have another one in 20 minutes."
Oh, that's very nice.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's really nice there.
Yeah, they don't do that where I am.
And posh food and things. And they theme it as well. When there's a 007 movie playing or something, they'll bring you a martini that's shaken and not stirred and things like that.
Yeah, that's very nice.
That makes going to the cinema fun, and I think you have to do that if you can.
I'm off to the cinema tonight.
What are you going to watch?
To see the 365, which is the sort of women's secret agent thing.
Oh.
So it should be.
I'll be interested to see how it was.
Yeah, no, it should be fun actually. Nice, I haven't been to the pictures for ages. Get a bag of popcorn.
Exactly. No, and that's what I'm saying. You can actually do better than popcorn nowadays. A nice cocktail and a burger or something like that.
I'm on a diet.
Yeah, well, what do you go to the cinema for except to enjoy yourself, please?
This is true.
Now, the former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, has said the Labour Party must take centre ground now that a Tory MP has defected to the party.
Well, he told The Independent the party needs to build on the defection of Christian Wakeford and capitalise on it. Keir Starmer is reportedly in talks with other Tory MPs to cross the floor. Well, let's talk to John McTernan, who was Tony Blair's political secretary. Morning to you. I mean, look, no party wins unless it's in the centre ground, does it? There seems to be a statement of the obvious in a way.
Yeah, look, it is a statement of the obvious, but it's amazing that the Labour Party forgot it for 10 years. That after Gordon Brown got defeated at a general election, the Labour Party decided to go left with Ed Miliband, then left her still with Jeremy Corbyn, and then double down on that and go left her still in 2019. And the result is a landslide for the Conservative Party. What's amazing is the Tories have decided to abandon the centre ground they were occupying, making it available for Keir Starmer. So this is absolutely the right time to follow Tony's advice and move back and seize the centre ground.
But that's the point, I suppose, is it will they be prepared to take advice from Tony Blair? Will Keir Starmer agree?
Look, I think everybody talks about Tony whenever he speaks. So whether people take advice, whether they say, oh, look, I've listened to him, the thing is, when he speaks, everybody goes, well, that was interesting. That was an observation. His speech on Thursday, which I attended, that has caused 3 days of commentary since then. It's because he is one of the best commentators on British politics, and he's still passionately committed to getting the best for Britain's future, which is, not what we think of when we look at the current state of the government, which is looking to get the best for the future of the Prime Minister or the best for the future of the party, but not the best for the future of the country. And that's a space, what's good for the country. That's a space that you can see Keir Starmer occupying. The left hate it. They attack him for using the flag. They attack him for being patriotic. But that's a sign that Labour's moving in the right direction. If you're annoying the Corbynites, you're doing the right thing.
It's a bit of a strange situation, though, isn't it? I mean, when you look at the Labour Party in general, there is a huge amount of dislike of Tony Blair, who was, of course, Labour's most successful leader ever.
Well, look, I think successful leaders are polarising. Look at the legacy of Margaret Thatcher in the Tory party, their most successful leader for such a long period, and yet she's still divisive inside the Tory party. And I think the thing that Tony always says is the great thing about the UK is we're a democracy. The Labour Party is a democracy too. People are allowed to have their view of him, their view of him and his legacy, him and his views. And the thing is, whatever you say about him, his legacy is all around us, not least in the peace of Northern Ireland. I mean, if you think of the way that the Tory party are still being torn apart by the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is itself the consequence of the Belfast Agreement, the agreement to the peace treaty, the Good Friday Agreement. You see, the legacy of Tony Blair getting peace in Northern Ireland is still causing political problems for the Tory party. So, great politicians leave a legacy you can see all around you.
You get the feeling when Tony Blair does make speeches and opens up about things like this that he's itching to get back in to be very influential. Do you agree?
He always has a chuckle when people ask him that question. I think the truth is everybody who's been in the top office, I worked in number 10, I wasn't an elected politician, you miss it every day. You wouldn't be human if you didn't miss it every day. But equally, time moves on. It's time for another generation, just as things change in music, things change in art, things change in every area of life. We've got to move on. The point is to be relevant in politics. And I think Tony's relevant in politics, and I hope that I still am today too.
Well, look, Keir Starmer is certainly relative in politics at the moment. And yet he's claiming that there could be more defections from the Tory party to the Labour Party. I mean, that's just spin, isn't it?
I don't think so. When you get one defection, what you're showing is a deep uncertainty inside a political party. And, when Labour had people who left over the anti-Semitism, over the leadership, the left leadership that they opposed, there's always more than one person when one person moves, because it's such a big and brave thing to do, to leave one tribe and join another tribe. You leave the tribe that you've grown up with to join one that doesn't trust you. And then you're in the Commons and nobody trusts you. You think, you fear. And so, look, of course there are people that Labour will be talking to. And one of the great ways that you cultivate potential defectors is just befriending people, maybe for people from the same region, maybe people who've got shared interests. The all-party parliamentary groups, the select committees, they're all areas where people from different parties work together. That's when you get to know people, then you have a coffee with them, then maybe you have a drink with them, you have dinner with them. There's much more socialising goes on in the House of Commons. It's a far less partisan place than people think it is, because it is a workplace. And then you gradually get to know, well, maybe this person's available, maybe this person's thinking about this. And I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Stewart coming to Labour at some point.
Forgive me, John, for jumping in, but you talked about the democracy, the great democracy we live in, and the democracy of the Tory party. It's not democratic, is it, for the Labour Party or any party to try and get people to cross the floor? I mean, shouldn't there be, if someone wants to leave their elected seat as being a member of a particular party, shouldn't there be a by-election?
Oh, look, people say that, but we have a system in which people vote for strong governments. We have a first-past-the-post system, and we have an increasingly focused on the leader, presidential-style election system. People vote for a party with a program. They expect that party to implement the program in government. Now, that's kind of block. That's what you vote for in a block. What you have to do between elections is you have to hope as a Democrat that there is some way of holding back a party that takes its majority too far, that believes it's above the people, above the voters. And what you're getting with Christian Wakeford's defection is a sign that inside the Tory party, people are actually really worried about Partygate, about the direction of the Tory party. It's a kind of regulator, really, inside the system. The people who are in, it may be until 2024 before voters get the chance to pass judgment. But you've seen in the by-elections that they've had, in the by-election in Chesham, the by-election in North Somerset, in North Shropshire, that you're getting an expression by the public that this government are going in the wrong direction. The defection is another way of doing that. You've got to have ways of chastening, of disciplining, of sending a message. And look, in the end, the voters in Bury are going to have the chance to say whether or not they want Christian Wakeford to stay on as their MP. Now he's a Labour MP, and that, in a sense, will be the ultimate judgment, because he obviously believes, Keir obviously wants, I obviously want Bury South to be a Labour seat with Christian Wakeford MP and a Labour government elected. And at the moment, that looks on the cards. And just remember, 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, it looked like Labour would be out for another generation.
So it's looking closer. Fascinating stuff.
John McTiernan, political commentator and former political secretary to Tony Blair. Thank you very much indeed.
Do stay with us because we have plenty more to come, including a look at today's papers. First of all, though, the weather.
And it's largely dry for many of us, but mainly cloudy skies are expected too. Looking at the details then, a cloudy morning expected across southwest England. Perhaps a few bright or sunny spells developing as we head towards lunchtime. Highs of about 8 Celsius with light winds for all. Grey skies overhead London and southeast of England too. It should remain dry though, feeling chilly with highs of 7. Winds remaining pretty light. Wales should see some of the brightest weather. Cloud will come and go, but there will be sunny spells, staying pretty chilly though. The Midlands largely cloudy, should stay dry. There could be a few glimmers of sunshine from time to time. Temperatures just about 6, winds remaining light throughout. Large amounts of cloud across northern England, the best of any cloud breaks to the east of the Pennines. Temperatures towards the coast about 8 Celsius. Patchy rain and brisk winds will continue across northwest Scotland through the day. Drier conditions are expected elsewhere with some sunshine in the east. Maximum temperatures of about 7 Celsius. Now, moving on to Northern Ireland, should remain dry through the rest of the morning. Some bright or sunny breaks developing by lunchtime. Temperatures of about 7 Celsius and the winds will stay pretty light. Often cloudy through the rest of the day across the UK. Rain and strong winds continuing across northwest Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It's 6:27. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and on your radio. Got to say good morning to Mel this morning, who's going to be watching us or listening to us, I don't know which, Mel, all morning because she's at home in Peterborough, not very well, got a little bit of a cold.
Oh, well, good morning, Mel. Thanks very much for joining us. We were talking about if you've ever met somebody famous who knocks your socks off, and this is a good one. Philip says, in the 80s, I sat next to Mother Teresa on a flight from Manila to Hong Kong. A really interesting lady. We talked about many subjects. Can you imagine finding yourself sat next to Mother Teresa? What's your opener? What do you say?
I don't know.
Where are you off to? What are you doing today?
Extraordinary. That would be extraordinary. Someone on Twitter, Sloopy, says, my first job was at John
Lewis's.
Lewis, I presume, or Lewis.
No, Lewis's. It's different from John Lewis.
Is it?
Lewis's, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not aware of that.
It's a Midlands thing, I think, Lewis's, isn't it? There was a Lewis's in Birmingham, but it's different from John Lewis.
Anyway, this is in Manchester. On the pen counter and sold a Schaefer fountain pen to George Beck.
Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And then Adrian says, on the subject of Boris Johnson, because obviously we'd love to hear your views on absolutely anything. Adrian says, just let Boris get on with dealing with the important stuff. Who cares about these parties? Health and the economy are the important things.
You see, it is interesting when you get all these MPs and commentators and everyone else saying, no, he's got to go, his time is up, it's all going to rack and ruin. And yet we get loads of emails, people saying, just let him get on with it.
Yes, because there's so many other things to talk about now. And maybe we do feel we've moved on from the pandemic and the way people behaved or misbehaved during the lockdown.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't care about that anymore. I don't know. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
One thing that a lot of people of the younger generation will be worrying about is, of course, their first home, and the average age of first home buyers has gone above 30 in every region of the country. The national average age is now 32, up from 29 a decade ago.
Halifax, the UK's biggest mortgage lender, said the increase comes from the difficulty of raising a deposit, rising property prices and changing lifestyle factors such as travel and higher education. The average house price last year was £264,140. £264,000 is the average. I mean, that's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
That's £250,000.
And it's getting the deposit, isn't it? I mean, that's the killer. It's getting enough money for a deposit for that.
Never would you have thought that we'd have got to the point where the average house price is £250,000.
Crazy.
It's terrible, really,
What was
isn't
the
it?
price of your first house? Do you remember?
7,000.
Was it? Loving it. Mine was 56.
56, yeah. 7,000 mine was, yeah. It was a little Barrett, 3 up, 2 down.
Oh, right. It's not bad for £7,000.
No, it wasn't, no. I think I sold it for about 10. And property prices were just booming then.
Yeah.
But
I suppose it's all relative.
it is all relative because you've got to afford the next house, haven't you? That's the problem.
Now, this is a funny one. It's well, not funny, but strange. The popularity of a prehistoric plant may soon lead to its extinction.
Cycads? I think it's cycads.
They're the world's oldest seed plants. They're heavily protected to continue its millions of years old history. Nevertheless, the plants have their own black market where collectors pay huge sums to traffickers. More than $1 million worth of cycads were stolen from national parks and gardens in Africa's Western Cape in the first 6 months of last year.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? Everybody wants to get their hands on one of these incredible old plants.
Maybe if they reseed and pollinate and all that sort of thing, maybe it'll spread them a bit further.
I suppose, yes. The NHS's oldest volunteer has just turned 100 years old. Beryl Carr, who volunteers as a cashier at Ealing Hospital Cafe in West London. Well, she celebrated her birthday on January the 14th.
Having grown up in Ealing in the 20s and 30s, she moved back to her hometown later in life after the death of her husband. She's been working in the hospital cafe for 19 years now. Her fellow staff members and volunteers celebrated her birthday with a vanilla sponge and a charity raffle.
Isn't that lovely? I bet she loves it there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to know quite a few volunteers at the Royal Berkshire Hospital in Reading, and they all absolutely loved it, looked forward to going in, and they make a big difference. I went to hospital the other day for a test, nothing serious, but it was lovely because the volunteers are there at the desk as you go in reception. They'll tell you where to go, they give you a big smile and everything.
Well,
they do such a good job.
When I worked in hospital radio, which is a long time ago, and you used to have to do then the ward visits to go and collect requests.
Oh, really?
It's very old-fashioned.
Yeah.
That was the nicest part of the job, was going around the wards and saying, do you want a record
So it's part of
playing?
hospital life, isn't it?
Would you like me to spin a disc for you?
Is that what you used to say?
That's a very long time ago.
Yes, clearly.
OK, plenty more still to come for you this morning, including the very latest from Tonga, where, thankfully, aid is beginning to arrive. Stay with us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, whether you're watching us on TV or listening to us on your radio this morning. It is 6:35.
Should we take a look at today's front pages? The Sunday Times run with an exclusive with a Muslim Conservative MP accusing the party whip of telling her she was fired from her ministerial job because of her religion.
The Sunday Express revealed their own poll found 72 respondents want Prince Andrew to be stripped of his dukedom.
An interview with Sir Tony Blair in The Independent has the former Prime Minister calling for the Labour Party to capitalise on their recent successes.
For the Mail on Sunday, Boris Johnson and some senior government officials are clashing over civil servants returning to their offices.
And Prime Minister Boris Johnson has accused Russia of setting up a puppet regime under Putin in Ukraine.
The Sunday Mirror says Katie Price could face jail time for breaking the terms of her restraining order.
And there's the Sunday People. People will starve, they warn, as the cost of living crisis continues to get worse.
The Observer says Sue Gray, the senior civil servant investigating the alleged lockdown parties at Downing Street, has analysed swipe card data of staff who apparently attended the event.
Yeah. The Star gives Geordies some good news, as they are allegedly the most prepared people in Britain for a possible apocalyptic event.
Why is that a good thing?
Well,
good people of the North East. Get in touch.
Very important.
It's good for Geordies, but it's pretty apocalyptic for everybody else. Gosh, that's difficult to say at this time in the morning.
Does that mean that you've got sort of supplies of pot noodles in the garage and all that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't go wrong with that. I love a pot noodle. There you go. That's
Not if you had to survive on them for years to come.
I could.
Could you?
I could, yeah, definitely I could. Let's go through the papers in a bit more detail with the political editor of the Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and the journalist and broadcaster, Miss Petrie Hoskin. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Tomorrow.
Nigel, let's have a look at the front of the Telegraph.
Yeah, big story. Did you say the Telegraph?
I did. Is it not? We can go through.
We've got the Telegraph here, that's fine.
You can start with what you like, Nigel. It's entirely up to you.
Ukraine. I think probably the threat of war is the most important thing going on this morning. And this is some extraordinary news that came out last night from the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, where she released some intelligence information that Vladimir Putin is planning to take over the Ukrainian government and install his own puppet regime.
That's not that shocking, though, is it? I mean, that's what he would do, isn't it?
Yes, that is what he would do, but he's also got 100,000 troops massed on the border, and obviously the...
I agree, the whole situation is shocking, but just, that's part of his game plan.
Really, the whole thing here is that we're in one of those situations where we'll have to see who blinks first. We're saying we're not going to allow him to invade Ukraine, and if he does, we will cripple Russia's economy. What Putin is saying is that he wants NATO off his doorstep. He's worried about Russia's security and claims there was a deal that went back to 1990 that NATO wouldn't encroach into Eastern Europe. And now on his border, he's got Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. So that's what he wants us to do. We're saying no way. And as a result, that we will confront him if there is an invasion. So it is a really dangerous situation.
If he takes over Ukraine, he will have NATO on his border.
Well, this is very difficult, isn't it? Because this is what America is saying, that they can't go in and support the Ukrainian troops with proper fighting because it hasn't been NATO approved. They wouldn't go it alone. So I'm wondering why NATO hasn't pulled Ukraine into NATO.
It's trying.
So that's what they're trying. Yeah, that's what.
But
Putin's
why
doing,
they haven't?
isn't it?
Well, I mean, it can't be that difficult.
Then
Then they are afforded the protection of the world, as opposed to at the moment just a few guns here and a few soldiers there.
Yeah.
But that will increase hostilities anyway, wouldn't it, if it happened?
Well, yes. I mean,
Putin would just see red.
Well, at the moment, we've already gone in. I mean, we've sent from Britain 2,000 anti-tank missiles into Ukraine. We've got special forces operating there as trainers. So we've certainly sort of struck our colours to the mast in the sense we're saying we will protect Ukraine, whatever. At the moment, de-escalation is the big key. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace goes to
training
Moscow
soldiers is very different to having boots on the ground, though, isn't it? That is very. If you send a force to fight,
they are special forces.
Yeah, but they're not there to fight. They're there to train.
Yeah.
So there is a slight difference there in our ability to protect Ukraine.
But if de-escalation is all, that's what you would hope for.
Yeah.
Putin's not very good at that, though, is it?
No, that's the problem. And obviously, he's seen that the West has actually backed down before. And the danger is he'll think, well, I'm strong enough now to actually force this through. So, again, we have to see. But if somebody doesn't blink first, there is going to be bloodshed.
Yeah.
It feels like the Cold War all over again.
It does, doesn't it? It does. What's the Mail on Sunday got, Petri?
Right. The Whitehall blob vows will work from home forever. Now, this is civil servants who are saying that they don't want to go back to the office, and the unions are backing them at the moment, saying, well, is it safe? Is this just a political move that you can go back to the office? But, of course, Whitehall has got to be seen to be leading by example. It cannot expect the city to go back, or people in other parts of the country to go back to their offices if they are not prepared to. However, there probably will be in future some hybrid version, and they're talking about a 60-40 split of 60% going staying at home and 40% going into the office. Now, this is probably going to be a future thing. Had those departments been working at 100% during these lockdowns, fair cop. But for those departments that have failed, and we've seen the Foreign Office fail in a most catastrophic way because they weren't in the office, then we have to question whether that 60-40 split is viable.
I mean, working from home, just as it has there are some benefits to us as individuals, but you don't get the same stuff done.
No, but we're still paying for per chair at a desk, we're paying £10,000 a year as taxpayers.
You mean for the office space?
For the office space.
Yeah.
But we're also
£10,000 that isn't being used.
But we're also then paying them because they're claiming on expenses, electricity and phone lines.
Yes,
and all that sort of
and
thing.
also we haven't removed London waiting. So for those people who were getting London waiting, which is an extra few £1,000s a year for their travel expenses, that hasn't been removed. So they're still getting those travel expenses even though they're not travelling. And a lot of people, including me, think that that's really unfair.
Well, no.
Come on, if you're not travelling, you don't need London waiting.
Well, no wonder they don't want to go back. Having the
Can
cake
I
and
ask
eat it.
maybe a naive question I missed somewhere along the line? What a Whitehall blob is? What's a blob?
Well, I think they're suggesting that somebody is lazy.
It is kind of the Whitehall establishment, and so it's been known as the blob.
The blob.
Oh, I see.
Which is a fairly offensive
I wondered if it was
term.
BLOB, like bring your own something.
But I would have thought that after the pandemic, in all walks of life, we're going to have a bit of a reset. And
We are.
surely that those of us who can work sometime at home, and I appreciate you guys can't, you've got to be here, but those of us who can work from home probably will. I mean, I've found that since I've been returning to the office-type work, I can go into the House of Commons a couple of times a week. But if I'm spending a day writing, there is absolutely no point sitting in an office just doing that. So cut out the commute and do it from home.
But it's the implications, isn't it, for the rest of the country? The fact that if you've got the sort of job that we sort of have, where you could, yes, I'd spend a day writing at home, that's all well and good, and a lot of these people who can get on their computer, but the vast majority of people out there, they're having to go into the factory or the shop or wherever.
No, I
wherever
appreciate
they
it
will
is.
see this as
not everyone
unfair.
can do it.
And so it seems unfair. They're going to think, well, this is unfair. We've got to come and work the tills or whatever, and you lot
If
can
you've got
stay
to
at
go
home.
out, if you've got to go out to a job, then that's the only way of doing it. But some of the benefits of people actually staying nearer home who can is what it does to local economies. So I know that sort of sandwich shops in the big cities may end up closing because of this, but they could well open up
somewhere else.
up somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
and maybe you have to go through. I mean, we all recognise now, don't you, that many careers have to go in phases. You do different jobs at different ages, and maybe while working from home, while you're bringing up a small family or something,
Could be
if
way
you can
forward,
make
yeah.
that part of your career plan, maybe that's the way to do it.
Maybe. OK, what about the Sunday Express, Nigel?
Sunday Express is on Prince Andrew, and this is a poll that the Sunday Express has done about the Prince's future. And what it says is that 72% of people think he should be stripped of his Duke of York title. Now, obviously, Andrew says he's innocent of any kind of sexual abuse. So the question is, why would we be punishing him about his title unless any of that changes? But he has sort of kept some rather odd friends, and I think that there is a question over his judgment. So I can understand why people are saying, I'm not sure we want him now as the Duke of York.
But you can't jump the gun, can you?
Well, no, wasn't he best friends with a convicted paedophile and now somebody who's a convicted child trafficker?
Yeah, but I wonder, will he get the titles back if he wins his case?
I doubt. Once lost, never regained, I think.
Because the stuff that's gone now, that he's lost all the regimental
Yeah.
stuff.
That won't come back.
never
But I
come
wonder
back.
if he will be able to use his HRH again, if they take the dukedom off him, whether he'll get... I just wonder if he is cleared, right?
But
we have to presume...
the mud is already sticking, isn't it? Whether or not he's cleared. The fact is, as I just said, he, as you said, had some very odd friends. They were more than odd.
I've got odd friends.
Yeah, no, these were, but these
Not that
weren't
odd.
the same at all.
And
no.
also, there will be no trial coming up, which actually can clear him in a sense. We're talking about a civil action rather
It's a civil
than
action,
criminal
yeah.
one. So at the moment, I think that people are reacting like stripping of his military titles. It's the way that the armed forces reacted. It's what we see now rather than what might happen in the future.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
The Observer, Ms. Hoskin.
Yes, well, this is about the Sue Gray report, the investigating the allegations of at least 9 lockdown-breaking parties. And I don't know if this is such a story big enough for the front page of The Observer, to be honest with you, but she's now looking at the swipe card data, and you go, well, yeah, of course she is.
Well, yeah.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you?
Really? I mean, what's interesting to me about this is the police referring itself, of course, to the Commission to check its behaviour, because the police were checking people into number 10.
Yes.
So, because they couldn't have got in without that.
Yeah.
But I did ask you, Nigel, didn't I, about the swiping data, because you're in the Commons a lot.
Yeah.
Whether you have to swipe out, because a lot of places you swipe in, don't you? But you don't swipe out, you press a button.
No,
so how do they know what time they
left? The
left?
situation would be over at number 10. Certainly in the House of Commons, you have to key in, and we have codes to actually get into the building, but they do let us out without having to
So they wouldn't know if you were still wandering around the building in 3 days' time.
Well, yes, I think because we have to go through various doors, and as a result of that, we have to use our cards to get through doors.
Oh, right. So
they kind of know where you are every
And
minute
that's
of the
point,
day,
isn't it? That is
Yes.
the point.
And I think that
Sue Gray will be trying to figure out where everybody was.
Downing Street will be similar, so Sue Gray can actually do this. I mean, the question is, even if she finds another party, will that make any difference? It seems to me that the damage has been done, and unless she finds something really dramatic, I'm not quite sure where her report takes us after this.
I get the sense that the more parties there are, the more bored people become of the story.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yes,
my
fair
feeling.
point.
You kind of go, oh, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
You know, the first one was so shocking, but we've kind of been watered down with
Yes,
all
the shock
others.
factor has diminished, hasn't it?
Exactly
interesting. The people getting in touch this morning. Robert says backbenchers calling for Boris to go are worried about their seats, but are making matters worse by making false accusations. Barbara says the witch hunt is not to get Boris out, but to reverse Brexit by that route. Be very careful, because there'll be a massive backlash from Brexiteers.
I don't think that's true.
That could never happen.
Yeah, but there was some very strange comments from Lord Adonis in the papers yesterday,
yeah, and
which sort of implied that.
It is actually Andrew Adonis who sparked this off. I mean, the impression I get from the House of Commons is that the view generally is Brexit is now done and dusted. There's no question of going back into Europe. I regret the decision. I was a Remainer, but I accept totally I'm on the wrong side of the argument that the British public have made their decision and we must now make the best of it. And I think that seems the general view in politics. Labour, for instance, would not, if they were in power, take us back into Europe. It won't be policy.
Right.
It won't be policy next election.
We'd have to wait as well, wouldn't we? We'd have to accede to Europe again. I mean, there'd be a whole.
Oh, they'd rub our noses in it now. We'd be worse off.
Years or something before we could go back in.
We've gone so far down the route now. Going back in
exactly.
would be impossible.
It would be absolutely
also, Europe
impossible.
would probably make us take the euro as well.
Of course they would.
Well, they would, yeah. Well, let's hope that's put your mind at rest a little bit, Barbara, on that one. Thank you both. Petri Hoskin, Nigel Nelson, we shall catch up with you a little bit later on.
Yes, thank you very much. People saying nice things about you.
Oh, are they?
David and Jenny say, what a surprise and pleasure to meet the one and only Stephen Dixon at my son's graduation at Nottingham University a few years ago.
Nottingham Trent, that will be.
I was so overawed, I nearly asked for a photo with him instead of him with my son. My wife Jenny was really disappointed she wasn't there to meet him.
Yes,
so you better say hi.
I remember you, David.
Really?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, you poor boy. Nearly got missed out, but there you go. It was nice. I used to like doing graduations. It was fun. I used to go every year and hand out packs for the Alumni Association.
Oh, brilliant.
There you go. Let's bring you up to date this morning at 6:50, and the Tory MP Nusrat Ghani claims she lost her job as a transport minister in 2020 due to her Muslimness. The MP for Wealdon spoke to the Sunday Times, saying a government whip told her that her Muslim faith was making colleagues uncomfortable. Chief Whip Mark Spencer strongly denies that and says he considers her remarks defamatory.
A 1,500-acre fire near the coastal community of Big Sur in California has triggered evacuations and closed parts of a major highway. The Colorado fire, which has been active since Friday, was 5% contained. Around 400 people in Monterey County were evacuated.
Officials have confirmed the death of a British man in Thailand amid reports he was attacked. A second Brit was taken to hospital following the incident yesterday morning. The Bangkok Post said the dead man was found with knife wounds.
And Katie Price could face jail, apparently, after she was arrested on suspicion of breaching a restraining order. Police were called to the Sussex home of the former glamour model on Friday. Sussex police say officers arrested a woman in her 40s who has been released under investigation while inquiries continue.
Now, first aid vessels and flights have arrived in Tonga as the devastated Pacific nation begins a clean-up after that major volcanic eruption that blanketed the islands in ash.
Yes, the government says that clean drinking water now is the priority, but at least one aid flight has been turned away, apparently due to a positive COVID case on board.
Well, let's talk to Rachel Afieki-Tamoa-Piau, who's chair of the New Zealand Tonga Business Council. Good to see you this morning. I mean, look, this aid has been a long time coming, really. There must be absolute desperation for this aid to get through now.
Oh, absolutely. Good morning. It's lovely to have you be on here today. Absolutely. It's been 1 week since the Tonga Hapai eruption and tsunami affected the Kingdom of Tonga. And initially, of course, power communication was all cut off, but now aid's starting to arrive as of midweek, particularly from New Zealand, in Australia, and more recently Japan. And so in particular, drinking water arrived yesterday on the HMNZS Aotearoa, which was able to deliver about 250,000 litres of water and is able to produce about 70,000 litres of water daily to ensure fresh water is available for the people of Tonga.
What do you know of this flight that we've just heard about that might have had to turn back, I think, because there was one COVID case on board? How is COVID actually going to impede any rescue efforts?
Well, I think the COVID-19 pandemic will continue to pose challenges to any country who's wanting to provide humanitarian assistance to Tonga and particularly New Zealand and Australia. And the flight that was turned back was because it was a COVID case was detected on it. And I think it's really important because Tonga is COVID-free. And I don't think the Tongan government and neither New Zealand or Australia would want COVID to come into Tonga. And so they're taking every precaution, and they've got some very well-established protocols in place to ensure that Tonga is kept safe, and they're practicing the necessary protocols to ensure hygiene and contactless delivery in Tonga means that all aid that is deployed is kept at a safe distance.
I mean, obviously, you're chair of the New Zealand Tonga Business Council. I mean, the first aid, this immediate response is the focus now. But in terms of Tonga getting back on its feet, what sort of timescale are you looking at here?
We're working towards, I know the Tongan government are working towards the mid to long-term plan. We've got to remember this is the first time this sort of disaster has occurred in the kingdom, an eruption and a tsunami unanimously. And so there's a lot of rebuild to be done. There has been significant devastation that's been brought to the western side of the island, and of course the outer low-lying islands closest to the volcano were very badly affected, and already Navy boats are going in to take those who remain on those islands and bring them into a bigger island for safety. Of course, the economy will be hit because right now vegetation, the agriculture sector and also fisheries will be suffering the immediate effect. And to ensure that the cleanup of the ash that was blanketed throughout the whole island will be a long process in itself. And ensuring, again, that our water is really safe. Businesses will be wanting to recuperate also from this situation. And of course, the New Zealand Tonga Business Council will be working very closely with partners on the ground to support businesses back to normal so they can operate effectively and look to employ the local people.
Oh, I mean, it's an awful situation.
It is, and such an extraordinary thing to have happened like that.
It is. Rachel Afieki-Tamoa-Piau, good to talk to you this morning.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the next hour, we'll have a look at the latest sport and showbiz. But first, here's the weather for you. And it's largely dry for many of us, but mainly cloudy skies are expected too. Looking at the details then, a cloudy morning expected across southwest England. Perhaps a few bright or sunny spells developing as we head towards lunchtime. Highs of about 8 Celsius with light winds for all. Grey skies overhead London and southeast of England too. It should remain dry though, feeling chilly with highs of 7. Winds remaining pretty light. Wales should see some of the brightest weather. Cloud will come and go, but there will be sunny spells, staying pretty chilly though. The Midlands largely cloudy, should stay dry. There could be a few glimmers of sunshine from time to time. Temperatures just about 6. Winds remaining light throughout. Large amounts of cloud across northern England, the best of any cloud breaks to the east of the Pennines. Temperatures towards the coast about 8 Celsius. Patchy rain and brisk winds will continue across northwest Scotland through the day. Drier conditions are expected elsewhere with some sunshine in the east. Maximum temperatures of about 7 Celsius. Now, moving on to Northern Ireland, should remain dry through the rest of the morning. Some bright or sunny breaks developing by lunchtime. Temperatures of about 7 Celsius and the winds will stay pretty light. Often cloudy through the rest of the day across the UK. Rain and strong winds continuing across northwest Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello, good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 23rd of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
Yeah, we're live across the whole of the UK on your TV and your radio, and whether you're watching us in Bath
Or watching us in the Bath, yeah.
or listening to us in Inverness in Scotland, or maybe you're watching us on YouTube in Port Talbot. Wherever you are, you can take us out and about with you today.
Some of you may also be catching up via the GB News app whilst travelling to work. You could even be a Brit abroad. If so, we're here for you too. So coming up on this morning's Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Boris Johnson continues to fight for his political life as more Tory MPs call for a criminal investigation into Partygate. The Prime Minister has returned to the war footing of his leadership election campaign to try to retake control of his government. But will it be enough to survive what's coming up in Sue Gray's report?
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair has called upon Keir Starmer to seize this opportunity to retake the centre ground.
And Tonga has turned back an aid flight from Australia after a positive COVID test. The islands were blanketed in ash after a massive volcanic eruption which reached halfway to space and left tens of thousands of people without clean water.
And you can join in any of our discussions. Do give us your views by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews.
Loads of people getting in touch this morning, and I've got to say, I mean, we talk about meeting famous people. Oh, some of you have had some great experiences. Liz has been in touch. Morning, Liz. She was working for Lufthansa in the early 80s. And I walked past one person in the early morning, and they started to sing to me. Turned around, and it was Freddie Mercury.
I would love to have met Freddie Mercury.
I was so shocked. All I could do was smile, the biggest smile ever.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm a huge
What a
fan.
memory, yeah. Peter says, in 1962, I went with my parents to a New Year party in Hertfordshire at a posh venue. And across from our table were sat Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor just before they married. For the first time? Second time? Third time? I don't know.
How many times was it for those
Well,
two?
at least twice, wasn't it? Yeah.
Les, I beg your pardon, Les used to play in a rock group in Liverpool at the same time as the Beatles, as every other kid in Liverpool did during those incredible years, I bet. We were moderately good, and we were booked as a supporting act of the Beatles on their return from the second spell in
that's
Hamburg.
quite cool.
Wow, their fame was growing exponentially, and they were soon to release Love Me Do. We met them in the changing room backstage.
Oh, that's wonderful. And actually, and we were talking a bit earlier about you could be watching anywhere in the world. Well, this is brilliant. Suzanne says GB News is now my favourite and the only news channel to watch. I have to say how much happier I feel watching you two in the morning.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you, that's lovely. And Jackie says, I just wanted to let you know that I'm watching you from our motorhome whilst we're travelling around Spain.
Very nice.
Isn't that fab?
And Pat and Lucy, who incidentally met Harold Wilson, the then Prime Minister, where one of them was at an apprentice school in Scotland. As an expat looking in, all this political nonsense in the UK borders on farcical. That's an interesting point. They're watching online in Namibia.
Wow. Well, good morning, or whatever it is in Namibia. Don't know whether it'll be morning.
What time it will be in Namibia. Get back in touch
But
and let us know.
great that you're watching. That's fab. Thank you so much. So please keep getting in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And send us your pictures and everything else, particularly if you've met somebody famous that's knocked your socks off.
Yeah, I don't know. Have we got it graphicked up?
picture?
The picture of... Is that... Oh, yeah, we might do. Andrew and Stephen, who own a hotel in Kelbrook in Lancashire. Oh, beautiful. Last year, the one and only Joanna Lumley checked in because she was filming in the area. Surreal to be serving Patsy for meals and drinks. There you go. And they sent this great picture
look.
She stayed with us for one night, and it was a great privilege. Such a star, but down to earth and funny.
Oh, that's lovely. So, yeah, do get in touch. If you've met somebody famous who's knocked your socks off, or even if, they didn't, even if they were a disappointment.
Yes, it does happen. This is
Sometimes
never
you can
meet your
somebody-
heroes.
No, well, they say that, but most of the heroes I've ever met have been absolutely wonderful. And those that haven't, you think, well, maybe I caught them on a bad day. You never know, do you?
No, well, this is true. You never know what sort of day they're having, but I always think it's nice if people are nice. So there you go. Now, let's talk politics, should we, this morning? It's the start of another week for Boris Johnson. This is going to be a difficult week, no doubt. The Sue Gray report is expected to be coming out, and some Tory MPs are calling for a criminal investigation from the Metropolitan Police.
It gets worse and worse, more and more unedifying, and I do wonder what we all think about it, really. Well, earlier we spoke to Norman Baker, former Home Office Minister in David Cameron's coalition government.
Well, clearly a large section of the Conservative Party in Parliament does want him to go, and has been very open about that. And, there's been rumbles in parties before, my party and the Labour Party, in the Conservative Party, but I can't ever recall a time when it was as open as this and as forceful as this. And, the Prime Minister is basically a dead man walking, as far as I can see. He's waiting for something to happen. But even if Sue Gray-Porter is not as damning as people think it will be, and even if somehow he scrapes past this, I mean, he can't carry on, I don't think, in this way. He's now been very whole below the waterline. And if you look at the opinion polls, I mean, he's now got a poll rating worse than Jeremy Corbyn. I think he's going to have to go. I mean, all these allegations are there. And if you think about it from a Tory MP's point of view, all these allegations, all the things that have been said, all the Partygate information that's come out, can all be played back in opposition leaflets and opposition broadcasts all the way through to the next general election. And do the Tories really want to go to the next general election with all this being replayed indefinitely? I don't think so.
And of course, today's papers, there's yet more about it. And it's interesting that we were saying earlier that perhaps it's becoming a turn-off. More and more talk of parties. It's just beginning to get, I don't know, it's losing its effect.
Its impact, doesn't it? When it's just yet another party. And of course, I mean, they're not parties, are they? But they're gatherings which may have been illegal.
Yes, that we were denied the chance of having. So there you go.
Yeah, do get in touch on that one. I mean, just let us know what you think. I mean, so many people getting in touch saying, well, leave Boris alone to get on with a job. Someone sent me an interesting one about politicians should know who their bosses are, which are the voters.
Oh,
basically.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes, and I can't...
No. Oh, yeah. Sharon says, I'm northern and working class, and I gave my vote to the Tory party. I thought the voters were in charge, but these vitriolic backbenchers think they're in charge. I'm so angry with them. That, again, is interesting.
It is an interesting point, so keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
So let's bring you up to date with what is news today. And US police have confirmed that the stray bullet which killed a British astrophysicist in Georgia had travelled less than 100 yards and through an exterior wall. Dr. Matthew Wilson from Surrey was found with a single gunshot wound to the head in his apartment last Sunday. Brookhaven police say the death is random and there have been no arrests so far.
The chairman of the Royal College of GPs says compulsory vaccinations for NHS staff in England is not the right way forward and is urging the government to delay the vaccine deadline. Martin Marshall told the BBC that it could lead to the workforce being left short as staff refuse the jab. It comes as health workers protested against the jabs in London yesterday by laying out uniforms on the steps of Trafalgar Square.
And Britain has accused the Russian president of plotting to install a pro-Moscow leader as head of the government in Ukraine amid tension over a possible invasion. In an unusual move, the Foreign Office named a former Ukrainian MP as a potential pro-Kremlin candidate to take over in Kiev. And the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, said the Russian plotting showed the lengths that the Kremlin was prepared to go to undermine the government in Ukraine.
And if you fancy heading to the pictures tonight, the oldest working cinema in the UK is reopened. It's the Electric in Birmingham. It's under new management. It was closed for more than a year because of the pandemic. The new owners say COVID was the biggest existential crisis the industry has faced.
And it's 9 minutes past 7 already. Now, there have been reports of several dead swans being found at Attenborough Nature Reserve in the past few weeks.
Yeah, Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust says it's likely caused by bird flu and is warning that visitors shouldn't touch any dead or sick birds that they see.
GB News' Will Hollis joins us now. Hello. And where are you and what's going on there?
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Yes, you join me live from Attenborough Nature Reserve here in Nottinghamshire, about maybe 5 or so miles outside of Nottingham City. A beautiful nature reserve that is seeing the effects, at least the initial effects of a suspected case or cases of bird flu. You said there in the introduction, a handful of dead swans have been reported to the Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust, which runs Attenborough Nature Reserve. There's been at least one case of a dead swan, while there's been at least half a dozen suspected cases of dying swans. There has been no confirmation yet from DEFRA, the Department for Rural Affairs, into whether this is avian flu, but the Wildlife Trust is suspecting that that's what they've got here. There's also been a handful of other birds that have been discovered and have been noticed by members of the public by displaying certain attributes that might be associated with the avian flu. Department for Rural Affairs has been managing this crisis that's been going on, particularly affecting farming populations, poultry. It's well into the hundreds of thousands of birds that have been called so far. But at this particular site, there's been no confirmation as to yet whether this is avian flu. But it is warning people to be a little bit careful and cautious if they are visiting. Every year, thousands of people come to Attenborough Nature Reserve to watch the wild world. Now you're being asked to take care if you do. Recent discoveries of at least half a dozen dead and sick swans, plus other birds, makes Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust believe that avian flu has landed here.
We had reports relating to a gull, which could have been bird flu, and then we had a report of a dead swan, which has been reported as a possible case of avian flu. Then yesterday, we had a report of a larger number, possibly up to half a dozen swans. We're still looking into that report. We haven't found any further bodies.
It's not uncommon for wintering birds to arrive in Britain with avian flu, transferring it to local wildlife. However, this season, authorities are seeing a record outbreak. Where infected birds are found in captivity, like on poultry farms, the Department for Rural Affairs sets up control zones, inspects, and humanely calls the birds on site. This has happened at places in Charnwood in Leicestershire, plus East Lindsey on the Lincolnshire coastline, as well as many other sites in Britain, but most of them, at least 70, have been found in England. DEFRA also carefully watches for cases in wild birds at places like Attenborough. The suspected sickness here has been reported, but there's been no confirmation yet.
You've seen lots of the headlines, and there's been various protection zones. They all relate to the sort of the domestic rearing of birds. On the wild bird front, all the advice is that it's perfectly safe to be out and about visiting nature reserves, being in the countryside, and going about business as normal, as long as you follow the basic advice, which is not to touch any dead birds or sick birds, because it is spread by contact, direct contact, so that you can avoid that. As an extra precaution at Attenborough, we are asking people to refrain from feeding the birds at the moment, because that does cause the birds to congregate close together and could actually help spread the disease amongst birds.
Avian flu can transfer to humans. However, the risk is low. The government says not to touch any dead or sick birds and to contact DEFRA where they're found. Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust says it is safe to continue visiting its nature reserves. Will Hollis from Attenborough in the East Midlands. Yes, and as you saw there in the report that was just delivered, it's hundreds of thousands of birds that have been culled so far in farms across the East Midlands, as well as different parts of the UK. It seems to be on the Lincolnshire coastline and parts of Leicestershire where there are significant outbreaks here in the East Midlands, but wherever you go in the country, there is also a bit of a problem. Now, how DEFRA handles wild birds is quite significantly different. You can't necessarily expect them to be going around different nature reserves and sites where you might find wild birds and culling them. What they do is they manage positive tests and look out for the different signs of avian flu and collect birds that they do believe have died of avian flu. What they will say is that there are different types of flu and different types of sickness and different reasons for birds to be dying. The advice here is one that they really do push, is when you do find a dead bird or a bird that you believe to be sick, not to touch it, not to try and give it any sort of aid. If it is sick, to call the RSPB or RSPCA, and if you do find a dead bird, contact the Department for Rural Affairs directly.
Okay.
Well, thanks very much. It's difficult to contain avian flu, I would have thought. I mean, because you can't contain wild birds, can you?
No, it's worrying, though. Keep your eyes peeled if you're out and about today.
But don't touch.
No, don't touch.
Absolutely.
Coming up, we've got the papers for you in a lot of detail. Nigel Nelson and Petri Hoskin will take us through all of that in a few minutes. And it's largely dry for many of us, but mainly cloudy skies are expected too. Looking at the details then, a cloudy morning expected across southwest England. Perhaps a few bright or sunny spells developing as we head towards lunchtime. Highs of about 8 Celsius with light winds for all. Grey skies overhead London and southeast of England too. It should remain dry though, feeling chilly with highs of 7. Winds remaining pretty light. Wales should see some of the brightest weather. Cloud will come and go, but there will be sunny spells, staying pretty chilly though. The Midlands largely cloudy, should stay dry. There could be a few glimmers of sunshine from time to time. Temperatures just about 6, winds remaining light throughout. Large amounts of cloud across northern England, the best of any cloud breaks to the east of the Pennines. Temperatures towards the coast about 8 Celsius. Patchy rain and brisk winds will continue across northwest Scotland through the day. Drier conditions are expected elsewhere with some sunshine in the east. Maximum temperatures of about 7 Celsius. Now, moving on to Northern Ireland, should remain dry through the rest of the morning. Some bright or sunny breaks developing by lunchtime. Temperatures of about 7 Celsius and the winds will stay pretty light. Often cloudy through the rest of the day across the UK. Rain and strong winds continuing across northwest Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
The Leather Sofa Company. Beautiful leather sofas made by designer Italian brands. Available in a wide range of colours and styles, with over 300 suites in stock for immediate delivery. And up to £700 double part exchange on your old suite. Visit our showroom in Plasmile, Swansea, or visit www.leathersofacompanyuk.com to find out more. The Leather Sofa Company. Bellissima.
My word, Money Super 7, that was a close one. But you two were in and out of there in no time. And you saved Sarah an impressive £327 on a new credit card.
The Money Super 7, helping Britain save on credit cards and so much more. Super Save with Money Supermarket.
Better. It's out there. But you've got to chase it down. Time to cut the rope. Get stuck in. Turn him into him. Learning things my teachers couldn't teach. Reaching heights I never thought I'd reach. I'm part of a crew now, never alone. From nowhere to everywhere. I left a small town and turned it around. I was born in Blythe, but I was made in the Royal Navy.
Attention sale lovers! At Ron Skinner & Sons, we'll give you up to £1,000 towards your finance deposit on every single car. With over 1,500 high-quality cars in stock, all at our lowest ever prices. Pre-approve your finance in only 60 seconds using our free online finance checker. Call into your nearest showroom today. Ron Skinner & Sons in Cardiff, Tredegar, Neyland and Crosshands, or at ronskinnerandsons.co.uk.
Ron Skinner & Sons, where cars cost less. Could releasing cash from your home help fund a better retirement? Find out how much you could release with Key's free online calculator. Key, equity release that's right for you.
Welcome back. It's 7:19 and you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We're live across the UK on both your TV and radio.
Which is great, actually, because if you're heading out and about today, the nice thing is that you can watch us in the morning while you're having your cup of tea and a
digestive biscuit.
I was going to say a croissant, but that's a bit posh.
No, I made myself, before I came out this morning, I made myself a lovely cup of coffee just the way I like it.
Right.
And I grabbed 5 not digestive biscuits, rich tea biscuits, because they're such good for dunking.
Oh, they are good for dunking.
And then I walked out the door and came here and realised I'd left them at home. So there they are, sitting by the kettle.
Oh, no.
My coffee and my biscuits.
You left your coffee as well?
Yes. Clever, isn't it?
Oh, that's a bit rubbish.
I know.
I just had to grab a can of pop. But anyway, if you're heading out and about and getting in the car, then put the radio on, GB News Radio. And you can keep going.
Let us know where you are and what you're doing as well. We'd love to hear from you. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Now, a 19-year-old girl has been found dead on an army base in Larkhill in Wiltshire as she was training to become a soldier.
Yeah, a probe into gunner Jaisley Louise Beck has been launched by the Army since her body was discovered last month, and her death came just hours of a second soldier being found dead at Bulford Barracks near Salisbury. 28-year-old Lance Corporal Michael Joseph Mayer was found dead in his garage.
A court in Pakistan has sentenced a woman to death after she was accused of sending blasphemous caricatures of holy prophets. The woman's accuser said he had met the woman online but felt she deliberately defiled sacred personalities and insulted the religious beliefs of Muslims in her messages. The 26-year-old woman denied all the charges and claimed the man had made unwanted romantic advances. Pakistan has some of the harshest blasphemy laws in the world. In Sharia law, the testimony of a woman is also worth half that of a man.
Now, Muslim Tory MP has accused a party whip, the chief whip, of telling her she was fired from her ministerial position on account of her faith. Nusrat Ghani was sacked as Transport Minister in a mini reshuffle early in 2020. She's alleged she was told by the chief whip during a meeting in Downing Street that her Muslimness was raised as an issue and it was making colleagues uncomfortable. The chief whip, Mark Spencer, has identified himself as the person who Ms Ghani is making claims about and said the accusations are completely false and potentially defamatory.
Yeah, not very happy headlines, are they?
No,
Do
they're
stay with
not.
us, though, because we've got plenty more to come, including your showbiz and sports update, and you're getting in touch with lots of things to say.
Lots and lots of views this morning. I've got to read this one out from Ralph, who says, I live in Dubai now, but I used to be Stephen's neighbour when he lived in London about 20 years ago. By the way, your other neighbour, Tracy, is now my wife, and we have 2 kids.
Well, what a life story there.
No, funny, I remember Tracy and Ralph.
Yeah.
We lived in flats, and there was like 3 doors, and I was in one, Ralph was in the other, and Tracy was in the other.
Oh.
And they clearly got together.
And yes, exactly. You don't
been-
remember that, do you?
I should have had a glass to the...
Were you
wall.
Cupid? Yes, yeah. Interesting people that you've met. Roy says, I was sat having coffee in the reception area of the Grand Hotel in Yokohama, Japan, in 1995. James Brown made a grand entrance with his troupe, dancing and whooping as he did on his stage shows before being shown to his rooms. What a star, full of life.
Wow. Steve went to Los Angeles in 1982 needing camera film.
Oh, do you remember those days? Yeah.
The shop we went to had Henry Winkler, the Fonz, buying camera equipment, video equipment. I asked politely if I could get a selfie. I bet he didn't use the term selfie.
No, that's very modern.
That's new. And he said, as you politely asked, it would be a pleasure. We chatted and I left with a Polaroid souvenir. Oh, that's nice.
Lots of spottings of Paul McCartney. Mike says someone we know who is cabin crew once met Paul McCartney, and when he was offered food and drink in first class, he just asked for a bottle of water now and a cup of tea after takeoff and nothing else.
Marty Joe says, I met Emlyn Hughes after he had his brain surgery at one of the last after dinner speaking events. He was in Luton. He was approachable and friendly, and it was just a short time later that he died. A true football legend, and in fact, he's from Barrow-in-Furness, where I'm from, and Emlyn Hughes' mother lived 2 doors down from my nana.
Everybody's been a neighbour of yours at some point, by the sound of it. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about civil servants and how Boris Johnson wants them all to come back into the office and work from the office. And we were also mentioning the fact that maybe if they worked from home, they were actually putting in expenses claims for their heating and, their use of their home as an office, as it were. Well, Louise says, I'm absolutely stunned that civil servants working from home are having their phone and electricity bills paid for by the taxpayer. My daughter has worked from home during the pandemic and is now travelling to the London office twice a week, but she has to pay all her own bills.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't get it all paid, but they get an allowance, a daily allowance for electricity and things.
Well, Alison says many civil servants have been in the office all through COVID. I'm a civil servant. If I was working at home, I wouldn't be able to claim for my utility bills. We work hard, a thankless task, with little, if any, job satisfaction, constant rule changes and poor senior management. Please don't slag us all off like this.
No, well, it's not everybody. You're quite right, Alison. It's not everyone, but some people get on that. You're talking about people getting turned off by Partygate. Sarah says it's now really boring. Have people forgotten about the beautiful weather that sent the public in their droves to the beaches? Yeah. That's a fair point.
And Stephen says, hasn't Tony Blair got it yet? He is a corrosive element in Labour's politics. He has not been forgiven by a large portion of the people for his style of premiership.
Yeah,
it's not what you hear from everybody, though.
No, an interesting one about Boris from someone else called Stephen, who says, you have to hand it to Boris. He's like a well-beaten boxer who won't stay down, which sounds like a sort of compliment. But then he says, all he does now drags politics further down the scale of trust with him. So not a Boris fan, but it's...
Yes, an interesting perspective. I just wonder what most people think about all politicians now, because it just seems one thing after another, after another, after another. And it's not all just Boris, is it?
No.
It's one person saying something about another person. And maybe is it the press's fault for just reporting everything they say and not concentrating on the important things?
We get a bit between our teeth, if we talk as the press, generally speaking. And it's like a shark. When you smell blood in the water, then just go for it. And it's not always necessarily in the best interest of the British people to do so. But then again, if it's information, you need to know.
It's what people are saying, and you do want to know. I think everybody does want to know what their politicians get. We vote them into office. We expect them to do the job, and we want to hear if they're not doing the job up to standard anyway.
Yeah.
Right, yes, do stay with us. Lots more to come, as I was saying, including showbiz and sports, of course, all after this.
The Gold Bullion Company has been supplying gold and silver bars and coins to clients all over the UK since 1993. Once an option only for the super rich, more and more people are now ordering these products online with fully insured home delivery, and the gold items are VAT free. We'll bring you more on this story as it develops, or you can visit thegoldbullion.co.uk to see for yourself.
When was the last time that you've stopped to think if the makeup shades you're wearing truly suit the woman you are today? Is it time to rethink your routine? Choosing the perfect makeup is not just about your skin tone, but it's a combination of your skin, hair, and eye colour. That's what makes you uniquely you. That's why I created our Match to Me technology at Trinity London. It's foolproof. 15 seconds later, Match to Me has found the colours that suit you the best. Find your match at trinitylondon.com.
It is 7:29. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and your radio right across the UK and online all around the world.
Yes, and time to go through the papers now. Sunday morning, there's so much in the papers. Joining us this morning is political editor of the Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and journalist and broadcaster Petri Hoskin. And it's lovely to see you again. What have we got? What are we kicking off with? Petri, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, the national insurance increase.
Yeah, this is a really interesting story. Nigel and I have been going, what? In the room, having our coffee. And it's the Tory MPs who've met Chancellor Rishi Sunak to call for action on...
Petri.
What?
I've got to stop you, because where's your mic?
It's there on...
where's your pack? Oh, here we go.
Is it not on?
This is how undignified I have to rifle through people's pockets. Your mic isn't on.
You had to rifle... That's
through your pockets.
Can we?
Right. Okay. Okay. It's off.
We can hear you now.
Rishi Sunak. Basically, this story is that Rishi Sunak is trying to distance himself from the 12 billion national insurance increase that's coming in April by referring to it privately as the Prime Minister's tax.
Really?
Yeah. Very interesting. And Nigel and I were talking earlier about how Boris seems to avoid getting involved. It seems with policy decisions. So I think it would be quite unusual, but Rishi Sunak is calling it the Prime Minister's tax, and he's also saying that this is not the time to do it, that people...
Well, it
isn't the time to do it. But we were also saying that I wonder if they will reverse it. And I think that if Boris did, this would be a winner for him. This might put him back in the pole position.
Because already ordinary families are facing this enormous hike in their energy costs. Generally, the cost of living is just increasing and throwing people into a panic. Yeah. And then suddenly we hear about this.
And this is going to be brutal. This is going to be brutal. But because it's been so delayed, this is often a trick that politicians use as well, is they announce something that's going to happen in 6 months' time and we kind of forget about it. And then suddenly we've got less money and then it's like, oh, Yeah, I remember that.
The only downside of this is that the £38 billion that this was due to raise was meant to pay for sorting out the care sector, which has been absolutely devastated by COVID. And so it's all a bit difficult to know if you take away that tax, how they'll find the money to go and do that. And I appreciate cost of living crisis is coming. April will be the cruelest month when we get hit by energy increases and so on.
It's going to be massive. It's going to be brutal.
Yeah, it's going to be awful, yeah.
I mean, I know this is an unpopular idea with the Tories, but why not tax the rich more?
It doesn't raise an awful lot of money, unfortunately. The lower down you tax, the more money the Treasury gets.
I'm talking about companies. We have a situation in this country where companies who have their offshore office in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland or somewhere else, don't have to pay as much tax. That could so easily be solved with a sales tax that is applied here. So every time you buy your Starbucks coffee, you pay there's a sales tax that they pay, maybe they'll pass it on to us, of a penny. But even of a penny. But then that's a choice. Paying your national insurance is not a choice. So this will be an extremely brutal tax at an extremely difficult time when we know that companies who owe the taxman billions can negotiate. I can't, you can't, negotiate down their tax bill to say,
they've got to do something.
I'll only give you 100 million, take it or leave it.
But isn't it interesting that Rishi Sunak is hanging it around Boris's neck?
Well,
so openly.
Too brutal.
He's the easy one to blame at the moment for everything. So push everything of that.
Push it all on there.
If you're Prime Minister, never trust your Chancellor?
Oh, never.
Because they're always after your job.
There's always that, and also that they're kind of on opposite sides. The Chancellor's job is to save money. The Prime Minister always wants to be popular, is to spend it. So constantly they're at loggerheads.
Yeah.
If they reverse it, though, Nigel, it would be a big deal for Boris. This would help him a lot.
Well, it would help him, but I mean, as I say, then we've got the problem of where do you raise that money from elsewhere? So somewhere along the line, you've got to pay for COVID. Rishi has spent £300 billion on COVID funding, but the care sector is in desperate need of reform and needs an injection of cash. This was meant to pay for it.
So maybe the Tories should go after a few of their very, very wealthy friends and say, how about philanthropy for once?
What about Rishi Sunak's wife? Well, she's got a fair penny or two, isn't she? She's richer than the Queen.
Is she?
Yeah, so she could bung in a few quid.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Philanthropists.
Sunday Times, Nigel, looking at the BBC viewership, those figures are heading down.
That's me.
Oh, is that you?
I think that's Petrie, yes.
Oh, Petrie again. Oh, blimmin' Petrie, go on.
Go on then, all right. I've been saying this for...
She's been very greedy with this.
I'll get one eventually.
It's not my fault. Sorry, Nigel. 1 in 20 young adults watch the BBC programmes live. I mean, seriously, if somebody's got to tell the BBC that, then they really are out of touch. I know you've got sons in their 20s, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
I have one, and they don't watch the telly.
No,
there's no way they will ever buy a TV licence, not because they're cheating the system, but because they do not use the BBC in the way that it has been used. This is a disaster. Their answer to this, by the way, is to return to more youth programming. It will not work. They don't want young people to watch or listen to the BBC. It is ridiculous. And their drive at the moment on local radio stations and places like that to bring in younger presenters, to get younger people listening. Who listens to local radio stations? Older people.
Yes.
Not younger people.
So all you'll do is alienate the listeners you've got.
I mean, honestly, the BBC talk about navel gazing. They have no clue what's going on in the
It's a really very
world.
old-fashioned view, isn't it?
Really old-fashioned. Yeah. But my son, your son, everybody I know...
No, they don't watch television like we used to. I don't anymore.
No, even I don't.
No. With the licence fee coming up, I mean, surely the BBC is going to have to rethink the way it actually spends money anyway.
It's like turning a tanker.
Well, it is a bit like that, but it's a bit sort of civil service like.
Yeah, it is.
There are certain things that you can see that they could save money on. You wonder a little bit whether...
there's an enormous spread in the Daily Mail, in the Mail on Sunday today, about exactly where they could spend their money and save it.
Getting rid of a few managers might help.
Yeah.
On 250 grand a year, walking around with clipboards. I was saying to Nigel that when I was working during the first wave of COVID and the first lockdowns in the BBC in London, There were no clipboard Johnnies running around, and guess what? Everything worked fine.
Yeah.
So all those managers, I'm sorry, they've got to look to themselves, and they've got to get rid of them.
Clipboard Johnnies.
That's what I call them.
But what is the business model then for the future for the BBC? Is it
to try and go
just
younger?
being a programme maker like Netflix or something
I think
like
it should
that?
just concentrate on its news output and let entertainment be done by other people.
I agree with the light entertainment bit. I mean, I do think it's things like the BBC should be able to do what it does best. So Sunday night dramas, they do brilliant Sunday night dramas.
Not as good as Netflix now.
I do wonder.
But you don't have to watch them on a Sunday night.
No, and you can actually obviously you can record them or whatever. The other thing is where they spend money. That if you sort of send Professor Brian Cox onto the top of a volcano in Mongolia to talk about the universe, you do wonder a bit. Why do they spend all that money going to Mongolia?
Because they can.
For a 30-second clip of him.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, if he goes to an observatory, understand that. But the idea that you've got to actually have a shot, which is incredibly expensive, in the middle of nowhere, just because it looks pretty, it does seem to be a bit...
I wonder what they spent on... Did you see the New Year's Eve thing they did with what's-his-face?
No.
Years and years. It was
I
the
don't watch
most
the BBC.
awful thing I've ever seen.
What's-his-face and Thingamy?
Thingamy-bob. But it was awful. It was awful. It was absolutely
I heard
dreadful.
it was dreadful. I heard it was a bit embarrassing, actually.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the coverage of the fireworky thing?
Well, no, it was they did like a concert before and after.
Oh, yeah, no,
and
it was dreadful. Now I know what you're talking about. It was
awful.
gross.
Yeah, they've got to shape up.
The people at the top are making the wrong decisions.
They are.
But then they
Absolutely
do. They always did. Right, Nigel, what have you got for us?
Right, well you've been talking about the Tory MP, Nasrat Ghani, who claims that she was sacked because of complaints about her Muslimness. Now, we've seen the Chief Whip, Mark Spencer, actually identify himself as the person who talked to her, denies absolutely he said anything like this. And it does seem an extraordinary thing to say. Whips tend not to identify themselves, that they are sort of secret police of the House of Commons, never talk to the media.
But he's the one who's come out and said, oh, hang on a minute, I know this is about me.
He's saying he's denying it. What I think this shows is that the Tory party is in such a febrile state at the moment that they are in virtual civil war, and there are so many different factions battling each other. And until they resolve the question of Boris Johnson and whether he continues as their leader, this is the kind of thing that's going to keep carrying on.
Do you believe this? Because I can't imagine anyone with even the tiniest amount of political nous would turn around and say that to someone, even if they were getting rid of them.
I find it difficult to believe, but equally I think one has to take it at face value from Nasrat Ghani. If she says that's what happened, there ought to be a proper investigation to find out if it did.
Isn't it awful that there having to be so many investigations?
I know, yes, I know.
I mean,
But that's what I mean about a civil war.
government is going to be nothing but a series of investigations and inquiries.
The nation will be paralysed.
Well,
You think of the Sue Gray report. When we actually do get to see it, are there going to be great big black lines redacting all the...
No, apparently not. But what you will see is it'll be about 25 pages long. It'll be an absolute factual rundown of everything that's happened.
It'll be so boring.
She's quite pally with the Prime Minister, isn't she?
Well, Sue Gray is she's meant to be the cabinet enforcer. I don't think she's necessarily pally with anybody high up, that she will do it straight down the line. She has a reputation for this.
Does she have to draw a conclusion, though?
No, she doesn't. What she will do is what she has to do is set up the facts. So she won't necessarily blame anybody for anything, but would say, this party happened on this day, these are the people who were invited. I understand the Prime Minister knew about that. If she's got evidence, she will use that. So a lot of it may just be a bit more flesh on the bones of what we already know.
But that would then lead to a potential police investigation if they've got more facts to go on.
If it turns out there's a criminal offence being committed, within that evidence, yes, the police could be called in.
But they deliberately make these things 25 pages because they know most people won't read them.
I should be reading every word.
I know you will. Do you know what I mean, Nigel?
Yes,
a lot of this stuff comes out like this.
Will you be reading the new highway code, Patrick?
Well, I think I should.
This is in the Sunday Times.
Yeah, I think I should, and I think everybody who drives should, because I did not know this was going to be happening.
Nobody knew.
Cyclists will be told to ride in the centre of the lane.
What?
To make themselves more visible. This is to happen next Saturday. They will be encouraged to ride two abreast.
No, I thought they weren't meant to.
When we did the cycling proficiency, it was a big no-no.
But how are you meant to get past them?
You can't.
In the middle of the lane?
You can overtake them, but you must leave 5 foot
Yeah, well, that's fair enough.
Overtaking two of them, that means you've got to have...
You'll be on the verge on the other side of the road.
I mean, you have to basically treat them as a slow car. That's what we're being told to do now, so that they will have priority. This in faster lanes, they are in faster roads. They are supposed to still pull to the left, but they must be a metre away. So they are pretty much in the middle of the road there. But this is to create safety. And the interesting thing about this as well is it says that although there are massive cycle lanes, and they are now taking up whole lanes, they are not obliged to use them.
Oh, they don't have to use
No, they are not obliged to use them. There can be a massive cycle lane and you can be driving at 4 miles an hour behind a very slow cyclist because there's no way to overtake.
Well, what do we think of that?
Well, exactly that.
A bit sort of Jeremy Clarkson about this. The cycle lanes made traffic congestion worse.
Yeah.
But I was OK about it provided cyclists use it.
And they don't use
it.
it.
In the middle of the road, I'm not so sure I'll be...
Get over into your lane, mate.
Quite so sympathetic.
But the interesting thing is with this, and good luck with this, by the way, cyclists will now be told that they have to stop for pedestrians crossing the road. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
The last time I talked about this, cyclist said, yeah, but then I've got to start up again.
Yeah. Well, they don't. A lot.
They don't stop at zebra crossings.
Well, if we get run over, we've got to get up again.
Yeah. Yes. They don't stop at zebra crossings.
Oh, I don't know what to think about that one.
Next Saturday, this starts.
The next one is a report in Sunday Telegraph, which this is suggesting that the vaccine mandates for NHS staff could well be delayed. They were due to come in a couple of weeks' time when NHS staff would lose their jobs if they weren't vaccinated. It does sound like, if this is right, that it won't just get delayed, it'll get abandoned, because there's been so many protests about this. I'm in favour of everyone getting vaccinated. I'm against anybody having to be forced to be vaccinated just to do their job.
Well, even if they work in frontline healthcare.
Even if they work in frontline healthcare, that I think there are other ways of making sure you're COVID-free, constant testing, I don't mind any of that. I also think, though, there has to be a quid pro quo for this, and that is, if you choose to be unvaccinated for whatever reason, then I think COVID passports do become reasonable. So if you want to go to do something voluntary, like go to the pub, go to a restaurant, go to a nightclub, you need to provide proof of vaccination. If you haven't got it, you don't go. I think the vaccinated have rights too, and I don't want to be sitting next to someone in the cinema who is a coughing and spluttering anti-vaxxer.
But you don't mind going to hospital and being treated by somebody who doesn't have vaccine.
I would trust when I went into hospital that the person who was treating me was COVID-free, and you could do that with constant testing.
Well, the NHS... lateral flow testing, which aren't very reliable.
They're not very reliable.
Then and the NHS... use better testing. I mean, whatever it might be, and that you do want to know that the person who's treating you doesn't have COVID, of course. But that can be done without actually forcing them to be stabbed in the arm.
Well, the NHS already forces surgeons to have certain vaccinations,
like
as
hepatitis
it is. So that there is a precedent for this, and it's about protecting other people, not just yourself. Interestingly, I'm dead against the passports that you're talking about. I think that creates a two-tier system. Look, I have very poor immunity. I will just not go to places where I might be in danger. Everybody else, you crack on and have a great time at the theatre or the pub or wherever it is you're going to go. I won't go because you stood by me right at the beginning of this COVID crisis and you all isolated 4 people like me. Now it's my turn. So I'm quite happy to do that. So I don't think that those are... And I also think that this latest strain, the Omicron, means that we will have to learn to live with this in terms of it turning into a flu as opposed to something deadly. And the flu, as we already know, does kill people every year. COVID will kill people every year. A cold kills people every year.
Yes.
A car kills people every year. Look, we've just got to learn to live with this. I think that this is going to be a moot point in 6 months' time.
OK. Well, we shall see. We'll have you back to find out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Petri Hoskin, Nigel Nelson, good to see you. We'll catch up with you next hour.
Indeed. Let's bring you right back up to date with what's happening in the news. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair has said the Labour Party must take centre ground now that a Tory MP has defected to the party.
He told The Independent that the party needs to capitalise on the defection of Christian Wakeford. And earlier we spoke to John McTernan, who was political secretary to Tony Blair. This is what he had to say.
It is a statement of the obvious, but it's amazing that the Labour Party forgot it for 10 years. You know, that after Gordon Brown got defeated at a general election, the Labour Party decided to go left with Ed Miliband, then left her still with Jeremy Corbyn, and then double down on that and go left her still in 2019. And the result is a landslide for the Conservative Party. What's amazing is the Tories have decided to abandon the centre ground they were occupying, making it available for Keir Starmer. So this is absolutely the right time to follow Tony's advice and move back and seize the centre ground.
But that's the point, I suppose, is it will they be prepared to take advice from Tony Blair? Will Keir Starmer agree?
Look, I think everybody talks about Tony whenever he speaks. So whether people take advice, you know, or whether they say, oh, look, I've listened to him, the thing is, when he speaks, everybody goes, well, that was interesting. That was an observation. His speech on Thursday, which I attended, that has caused 3 days of commentary since then. It's because he is one of the best commentators on British politics, and he's still passionately committed to getting the best for Britain's future, which is, you know, not what we think of when we look at the current state of the government, which is looking to get the best for the future of the Prime Minister, or the best for the future of the party, but not the best for the future of the country. And that's a space, what's good for the country, that's a space that you can see Keir Starmer occupying. The left hate it, they attack him for using the flag, they attack him for being patriotic, but that's a sign that Labour's moving in the right direction. If you're annoying the Corbynites, you're doing the right thing.
It's a bit of a strange situation, though, isn't it? That, I mean, when you look at the Labour Party in general, there is a huge amount of dislike of Tony Blair, who was, of course, Labour's most successful leader ever.
Well, look, I think successful leaders are polarising. Look at the legacy of Margaret Thatcher in the Tory party, their most successful leader for such a long period, and yet she's still divisive inside the Tory party. And I think the thing that Tony always says is the great thing about the UK is we're a democracy. The Labour Party is a democracy too. People are allowed to have their view of him and his legacy, him and his views. And the thing is, whatever you say about him, his legacy is all around us, not least in the peace of Northern Ireland. I mean, if you think of the way that the Tory party is still being torn apart by the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is itself the consequence of the Belfast Agreement, the agreement to the peace treaty, the Good Friday Agreement. You see, the legacy of Tony Blair getting peace in Northern Ireland is still causing political problems for the Tory party. So, you know, great politicians leave a legacy you can see all around you.
Well, there you go, John McTiernan there. Should we liven ourselves up a bit this morning?
Oh, gosh, yes, we need it, because a lot of the headlines this morning are, even it's a Sunday morning, they are a bit depressing. So
at the grand old time of 7:49, Stephanie Tetchy has the Showbiz for us. Good morning.
Good morning. I would like to say that I hope Showbiz would be bringing some light, but I don't think it is this morning.
Well, you started with a little bit of Katie Price, which is a bit strange again.
I feel like she's the cat with 9 lives when it comes to breaking the law. So Katie Price could be potentially going to jail because she's breached her restraining order against her ex-husband's fiancé by texting her some abusive language in the morning yesterday. So she was arrested on Thursday and she was released on yesterday because she's breached her order. Before Christmas, Katie narrowly avoided going to prison for drink driving, and she had a suspended 16-week sentence. And now that she's done this and broken her restraining order, she could potentially be facing time behind bars.
Do you know, it doesn't matter. Whatever she does, she still makes front-page news, doesn't she?
She does, and you know what? She's one of those celebrities who I feel like time and time again, she manages to be above the law, and she gets away with it. In the past 10 years, she's already had 6 driving offences, which she's got away with.
But it seems to make her more and more famous.
It does, and I'm like, it's time for her actually to pay the price. That's got a ring to it. Katie Price paying the price. But yeah, I do think it's time that she faced some jail time. But it has been a bit tense between her and her ex-husband because just this week she accused him of sexually assaulting a minor. So that's all been in the headlines this week. So obviously it's reached ahead by her texting his fiancé.
Oh, so much drama going on. Meanwhile, talking of dramas going on, there are no more enders in the States.
It's an ender for EastEnders in the States, and fans over there are going crazy because PBS, which is a broadcast out there, have announced that they can no longer air any of the old episodes. And right now, they are 13. Right now, they're trying to see if Peggy Mitchell is going to win the Walford Council election. So they're deep into the good stories of EastEnders, and they're saying it's like you're taking a friend away from us.
Is it because BBC is keeping it for BBC America? Because there is this channel called BBC America.
But they're saying they could still watch it on BritBox, but they're saying it's not the same. They want it on TV, and, you know, there's so much to come for them. So, unfortunately for our US friends, they will not be getting any of the EastEnders actions.
Oh, no, you're missing out on 13 years of drudgeon depression.
Yes, absolutely.
Walford.
Yeah, you're missing nothing.
I don't know why you want to bother.
No, I know, but it's very, very important. So let's go from the biggest talking points in showbiz to sport. And Aidan's here. Hi.
Morning, Anne. How are you?
I'm fine. The Australian Open is happening all at the wrong time for me, and I love tennis, but I haven't watched it. What's happened?
Rafa Nadal's just gone through to the quarterfinals in the last few minutes, in the last half an hour or so. A victory in straight sets over Adrian Manarino, the French player. That's a decent win for him. So he's into the quarters. And we spoke yesterday, didn't we, about how the field is now opening up for him.
Oh, it really
much.
is.
I mean, you think about it. I mean, we spoke off set just briefly, didn't we? Djokovic not here. We've covered that in great depth in recent weeks. Dominic Thiem was injured. Andy Murray struggling with injury, already out. Federer didn't even take part. And then Alexander Zverev, the number 3 seed, he's out as of yesterday. So it's really opening up. I mean, you fancy with the pedigree, the experience he has, 5 finals, 1 victory way back in 2009. He's going to fancy himself to do it again. Now, we spoke about Djokovic and how he could move to number 21 in a number of Grand Slams he's won ahead of Federer and Nadal. Well, Nadal can do that now. He can go to 21. In fact, by the time...
Is Nadal at 20?
He's at 20 along with Federer, all 3 of them.
So he's doing what he could do, what Djokovic so wanted to do.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a huge opportunity because if you'd asked anyone 2 weeks ago if Nadal was capable of doing this, you'd say, look, he's going to go deep into the tournament because he's a world-class player, even at the age of 35. Yeah. But he has a real chance now of going to number 21. And you'd look at Djokovic and you see... He may not play now until Wimbledon. He's probably going to miss the French for the same reasons he can't compete in the Australian. So we could have a situation where Nadal wins this, the Australian. He always wins the French. They almost hand it to him because he's so good there. He's so dominant. He could be 2 slams ahead by the time Djokovic next hits a ball in anger. So that's what we're talking about here. And there's more play tomorrow.
He's a very popular man too, Rafa, isn't he?
Oh, hugely. I mean, he's. I met him once actually at a restaurant in Paris. Yeah, and a nice photo with him and everything.
What, you mean nothing to do with being you and him?
No,
just in a restaurant.
He didn't. Yeah, just in a restaurant. I was recommended it, and he was. I mean, he's a huge figure in Paris anyway. He's not from Paris, but he's a huge figure there, and he sees his role as kind of. He's very much out and about and visible publicly. I went there in 2018. And I met him. I mean, I thought he wanted a picture with me. I don't think it was.
Oh, he should have done. He should have done.
No, I managed to get one. Very charming guy. I've interviewed him many times as well. Great guy.
Have you ever had a picture with Marcus Rashford?
No, I've interviewed him a couple of times. It was great to see him back on form yesterday. I did think there was a little sneaky suspicion he might have been offside yesterday, but the VAR cleared him. But 5 goals in 17 games before yesterday. He was looking like a player who wasn't particularly enjoying his football very much. But that all changed yesterday. Yeah. Literally the last kick of the game against West Ham, a very tough, durable opponent. It meant that Man United are leapfrogging over West Ham into 4th place, and it reignites their Champions League hopes and lifts a little bit of the gloom as well over Old Trafford. There's been talk about bad body language. There's been talk about dressing room unrest. There's been talk about Cristiano Ronaldo being overmighty in the dressing room, the new manager not really...
the world of football, darling. It's worse than the theatre, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. These days it is. These days it is. But there's been problems with the new manager imparting his ideas. He's too much of a school teacher. The players were saying they're having to watch all these videos when they go home, and it's interrupting with their personal lives at home. So I mean, they've got these massive cinemas to watch them on. I imagine it would be quite a nice interactive experience.
Yeah, I think so, wouldn't you?
You would
think so. Aidan, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Catch you in your next hour.
Thank you. And in the next hour, we're going to speak to GB News' Ellie Costello live from a hospital in Oxford to find out why A&E staff are going to start wearing body cams. It's come to this. Anyway, that's coming up. First of all, though, the weather.
and it's largely dry for many of us, but mainly cloudy skies are expected too. Looking at the details then, a cloudy morning expected across southwest England. Perhaps a few bright or sunny spells developing as we head towards lunchtime. Highs of about 8 Celsius with light winds for all. Grey skies overhead London and southeast of England too. It should remain dry though, feeling chilly with highs of 7. Winds remaining pretty light. Wales should see some of the brightest weather. Cloud will come and go, but there will be sunny spells, staying pretty chilly though. The Midlands largely cloudy, should stay dry. There could be a few glimmers of sunshine from time to time. Temperatures just about 6, winds remaining light throughout. Large amounts of cloud across northern England, the best of any cloud breaks to the east of the Pennines. Temperatures towards the coast about 8 Celsius. Patchy rain and brisk winds will continue across northwest Scotland through the day. Drier conditions are expected elsewhere with some sunshine in the east. Maximum temperatures of about 7 Celsius. Now, moving on to Northern Ireland, should remain dry through the rest of the morning. Some bright or sunny breaks developing by lunchtime. Temperatures of about 7 Celsius and the winds will stay pretty light. Often cloudy through the rest of the day across the UK. Rain and strong winds continuing across northwest Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello.
Very good morning to you. It is 6 o'clock on Sunday the 23rd.
No, it's not.
It's not 6 o'clock, is it?
No.
It's 8 o'clock.
You're all right. You with us? It's 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Yeah.
What's happening to me?
No, I don't know. That's a worry.
I've just woken up. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday the 23rd of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne. We're live. Well, she is. I am.
He's recorded.
Across the whole of the UK on your TV and your radio.
Yeah, you could be watching us anywhere, and actually you are, but for instance, if you were watching from Preston in Lancashire or listening to us in Bangor in Northern Ireland, maybe you're watching us on YouTube in Lerwick in Scotland. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Some of you may also be catching up via the GB News app whilst travelling to work. You could even be a Brit abroad, and if you are, we want to hear from you. So coming up this morning on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Pressure on the Prime Minister builds as more Tory MPs call for a criminal investigation into Partygate ahead of Sue Gray's report, which is expected next week.
Accident and emergency staff in hospitals in Oxford will start to wear body cameras this week due to the rise in assault cases from hospital visitors.
As the conflict in Ukraine heats up, we'll ask one of the generals who was involved in planning for the Iraq war what it could mean for the UK.
And of course, you can join in on any of our discussions. Please do by emailing gbviews at gbnews.uk or tweet at gbnews.
It's interesting, loads of people getting in touch about Boris Johnson this morning, and there is a pretty consistent view, I have to say. Terry says, I'm absolutely raging at the backbenches and the civil service for this witch hunt. I hope Boris survived.
And Ruth says the unedifying spectacle of the Conservative Party at the moment is disgusting. How about a bit of loyalty for the guy who's done so much in the past 2 years? Be very careful what you wish for.
Rob's got an interesting one. He says, I cannot understand the media. Do they want to get rid of Boris, and for whom?
That's the point.
Well, I do sort of think the media, the papers, let's put it in the papers, when they get the bit between their teeth and they think they can topple someone, they quite want to do it. But for whom? They don't care for whom.
And as Ruth says, be careful what you wish for. Yes, exactly. Surely you don't get rid of a leader unless you've got somebody you really want in his place.
Yeah, it's a bit of sport, I think, for some people, though that's not to say that people who want to change at the top are necessarily wrong, of course. Now, interesting people that people have met.
Oh, yes, they go on. Oh, you've met some amazing people. I don't know if we've got the picture, but Terry met Roger Daltrey and Anne Nightingale during the filming of Quadrophenia. He sent in a picture. We're trying to get it into our system, but he said, and then Ian says, in the 90s, we were at a works party in Bawtry at the China Rose. When we looked at a table near us, there was sitting Roger Daltrey. We went and spoke to him, and he was a true gentleman. He came over to our table. Oh, there's one picture. I think that might be the one from Ian. He came over to our table before he went and dropped a bottle of malt whiskey on the table, and he said, enjoy, lads.
Oh,
Isn't that nice?
That is nice. So that's Terry, I think, during the filming of Quadrophenia.
Or no, it might be Ian. Well, I don't exactly. I'm not quite sure, but clearly Roger Daltrey impresses when you meet him in real life.
And we lost the great Meatloaf just the other day, didn't we? Another Terry says, I met Meatloaf in my younger days. I was one of the girls on his Bat Out of Hell video.
Wow, that's quite something.
So you know what I'm going to do when I get home is get that up on YouTube and see you, Terry. That's fantastic.
That is brilliant. And Rabin says, I met and spoke to Margaret Thatcher in 2002 whilst attending the Gurkha Chelsea Pensioners 2002 gathering. I got a photo signed by her too.
Oh,
yeah, I met her once at a cocktail. I mean, I interviewed her as well, but I met her once at a cocktail party, and she was introduced to me, and I think that whoever was introducing said, you know, this is Anne Diamond from TVAM. And she said, I've never... Now, what did she say? She said, I never watch it, but I'm on it a lot. I thought, get you, I thought.
Yeah, that's right.
I never watch it, but I'm on it a lot.
Oh,
yes, she was right there, she was.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Keep your thoughts and your pictures coming through as well. gbviews at gbnews.uk. It's lovely to sort of... Do you know what I really like about it all? It's finding out what you've been up to, what lives you've had, who you've met, what you like, what you're interested in. It's really good to get to know who you are. You know who we are, but we need to know who you are too, and that's really nice, I think.
That's why it's easy to get in touch. gbviews at gbnews.uk. And you can send us a picture as well, because that's always nice. I mean, where you are and what you're doing, what your breakfast is like this morning, like to see it.
Any old thing,
A
basically.
picture of a cheese toastie would be very nice, almost as nice as actually having one, I think, at the moment.
Yeah,
cheese toastie for the morning.
I love a cheese toast.
Yeah, we'll have to send out.
Yeah, that'd be very nice. At 5 minutes past 8, the bad news continues for Boris Johnson as Tory MPs continue to turn on the Prime Minister.
Yeah, the report into Partygate by Sue Gray apparently is going to be released in the coming week, and it's likely to pile more pressure on him somehow.
Well, let's talk to Tim Bale, Professor of Politics at the Queen Mary University of London. Good to see you this morning. We are seeing this sort of momentum gathering now, aren't we? Because it's not just about Partygate, but about pressure on MPs, intimidation, complaints about the whips. I mean, it seems like people are really wanting to pile on the pressure and use this opportunity.
Yeah, it does seem to be spinning out of control right now. And as you've already suggested, that probably has something to do with a number of Tory MPs feeling that Boris Johnson has passed his sell-by date as an electoral asset. They didn't really choose him necessarily to be the best Prime Minister this country's ever had. They chose him because he was going to get Brexit done and because he was going to win them an election. He duly did that. But now they're beginning to think that somebody else might be better leading the party into the next election.
There doesn't seem to be much loyalty around from the 2019 intake, or at least the Red Wall MPs. And yet, surely they owe their seats to him.
Well, I think clearly Boris Johnson did play a big part in that 2019 victory, but we need to be a little bit careful when we jump to the conclusion that it was all about Boris. Obviously, Brexit played a part and Boris Johnson was instrumental in that. But you have to remember that a lot of the groundwork for the win in 2019 was ironically done by Theresa May in 2017. A lot of those seats that came into play in 2019 were only in play in some ways because of the advances that the Conservatives made a couple of years before. So I think many Red Wall MPs realised that the role that Boris Johnson played was important, but he's not the be-all and end-all. And if you look at polling that's recently been done in those seats and in other seats, it doesn't look as if he is necessarily an advantage to them. In fact, he may well be a disadvantage.
Is there a divide between the new intake and the Tory old guard, if you like? I mean, I know some people like to draw a conclusion that there is, but I mean, there's plenty of the Tory old guard who are absolutely determined to get rid of him.
Well, I think that's true. I think it's very easy to say it's all the 2019 MPs, and a lot of Boris Johnson supporters will say, you know, they're naive, they don't really realise what they're doing. But it's also true to say, as we saw in the Commons last week with David Davis, there are some people in the old guard who are rather dismayed, quite frankly, about the behaviour of the Prime Minister and what's gone on at number 10, and just feel that he has to take responsibility for that, as David Davis himself said. So I think the problem for the Prime Minister is it isn't just coming from one particular group in the Commons. It's coming from right across the Conservative Party, and the number of people defending him, even in his own cabinet, actually is perhaps questionable. We've seen some cabinet ministers come out very strongly for him, like Nadine Dorries, but we've also seen some rather equivocal backing from some of the more crucial cabinet ministers who might well stand in any new leadership contest.
I mean, as a viewer of politics generally, have you ever seen anything quite like this?
It is difficult to remember. I mean, you will remember the 1990s and the sleaze, and we also remember the expenses scandal of 2009. And I guess in terms of how hyped up everything was and how het up people were at the time, there is some comparison there. But I think the day after day after day of this scandal, you know, it's gone on now for what, you know, a month or so. I think that really is quite something. And also, we've never really seen a Prime Minister drop this low in people's estimations as far as the polling is concerned. You have to remember now that Boris Johnson's ratings are something like Jeremy Corbyn's were, and that really is saying something.
Yeah, but is that ratings generally or ratings amongst Tory voters? Because one thing, and I know it's people who are getting in touch here, and that isn't in any way sort of a data that you can rely on in terms of any sort of polling in that sense. But lots and lots of people are getting in touch saying, leave Boris alone, let him get on with the job. There is still a lot of passion for him.
Oh, I mean, I think that's undoubtedly true. There is a core support for Boris Johnson and, of course, for the Conservative Party. And it's completely understandable when people look at politics through those, if you like, partisan filters, to use the jargon, that they're going to think one way rather than another. But if you look at the polls, even people who voted Conservative in 2019, and in some ways especially those who voted Conservative in 2019, having not really voted Tory before, seem very disenchanted with him. So I don't think it's true to say that it's merely anti-Tory voters who are coming out against Boris Johnson. I think, you know, the problem for the Conservative Party is that it stretches beyond that, and that's why they're going to have to think very hard about whether it's best to keep him or whether they're going to have to act as sometimes the Conservative Party does, quite brutally, quite savagely, and say, thanks very much, you've done a great job for us, but now it's time to move on.
Go. Yes, and they can be very ruthless like that, can't they? Tim Bale, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Tim is Professor of Politics at Queen Mary, University of London, and author of quite a few books, and I would suggest there's another book to be written here, isn't there?
I should think
and a movie, at least.
It could well be a movie. I wonder if it'd be popular, though.
Oh, there've been lots of those political movies, you know.
It has to be a TV movie, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I love those, don't you?
Fill a Saturday night for you. Look, it is 8:11 on GB News. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines today. And police have confirmed that the stray bullet which killed a British astrophysicist in Georgia had travelled less than 100 yards, but had passed through an exterior wall. Dr. Matthew Wilson from Surrey was found with a gunshot wound to the head in an apartment last Sunday. Brookhaven police say the death is random. There have been no arrests so far.
The chairman of the Royal College of GPs says that compulsory vaccinations for NHS staff in England is not the right way forward and is urging for a delay to the vaccine deadline. Martin Marshall told the BBC that it could lead to workforce shortages as staff refuse the jab. And of course that comes as health workers protested against the mandatory jabs in London yesterday by laying out their uniforms on the steps of Trafalgar Square.
Britain has accused the Russian president of plotting to install a pro-Moscow leader as head of government in Ukraine amid tension over a possible invasion. In a pretty unusual move, the Foreign Office named a former Ukrainian MP as a potential pro-Kremlin candidate to take over in Kiev. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, said the Russian plotting showed the lengths which the Kremlin was prepared to go to undermine the Ukrainian government.
And the oldest working cinema in the UK has reopened. The Electric Cinema in Birmingham, under new management, has opened again after more than a year of continuous closure, of course, because of COVID. The new owners say the pandemic was the biggest existential crisis the industry has ever faced.
It has been very tough for the cinema industry. Cineworld had sort of shut down for months and months and months. But there is, as much as I love watching a film on Netflix, as much as the next person or Amazon Prime or wherever it may be, but there is something about going to
lovely.
the movies.
Yes, it is. It's lovely going to the movies, isn't it? Being on a huge screen.
Yeah. And it's funny, I don't quite know why.
It's an outing, isn't it? And you can arrange to meet other people. And as I said, if you can go to one of those cinemas that serves you cocktails and things, that makes it even more special.
Plus, you can have a snuggle up on the back row.
Yes, you can, yes.
There's a song in there.
Yeah, sure there is. Yeah.
I may sing to you in the break.
Oh, please do. I look forward to that. Now, I tell you what, here is an absolutely fascinating issue. I don't know whether to be worried by it or reassured by it or whatever. And you can think of, watch this. Medical staff working in accident and emergency departments in hospitals in Oxford will start to wear body cameras this week. It's part of what's going to be a 3-month trial to help deter hospital visitors from being aggressive.
Well, let's talk to our South East reporter who's outside the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford for us this morning, Ellie Costello. Morning, Ellie.
Hello.
I mean, this actually causes a lot of concern, doesn't it? The idea that clearly a lot of patients going to A&E are getting aggressive.
Good morning, Anne and Stephen. Yes, it is very concerning, isn't it? There's obviously a need for this campaign. It's called There's No Excuse. It's this wider campaign that's going to be running for 3 months to essentially remind the public that there is no excuse for being violent, for being threatening towards A&E staff. So it's going to be happening at the John Radcliffe Hospital, which I'm outside now in Oxford. And their frontline A&E staff are going to be wearing body cameras on the front of their uniform for the next 3 months. It's starting this week, and these cameras are very small. They're about the size of an iPhone camera, and they won't be switched on all the time. They will only be switched on when an individual starts to become aggressive or violent, and that person will be informed that they are being filmed. So the idea is that this will deter people from becoming violent to staff, and in the worst case scenario, it might help to build evidence in a police investigation if it does indeed get that far. But as you say, it does raise concerns about why this is needed. So I spoke to Katie Mimpress, who is the matron of the A&E department here, and I asked her why this campaign had to come into force.
Become pretty much a daily occurrence, and it can be day and night. We've seen a sharp rise in the level of cases of verbal abuse. And thanks to the dedication of our staff in reporting this, we're able to really see that actually from November last year in comparison to the November the year before in 2020, we've more than doubled the incidences of cases of verbal abuse, unfortunately. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, unfortunately. It is multifactorial. Naturally, the pandemic is playing a part in things, and within the emergency department, we don't allow visitors unless it's exceptional circumstances, such as a registered carer or naturally a parent with a child. And people understandably want to accompany their loved ones, and a lot of this is born out of frustration in that they can't. And that's because we're trying to maintain social distancing, we're trying to protect our patients and our staff. So we will just follow national guidelines and trust guidelines and ask for no visitors. And that causes at times a lot of unhappiness, and that can escalate into verbal abuse. There's also times when we experience longer waiting times than we would like. And equally, again, that causes frustrations amongst patients and sometimes the people that are with them. And again, that can turn to verbal abuse.
That's Katie Mimpress here. She is the matron of the Accident and Emergency Department at the John Ratcliffe Hospital. And she actually gave me some figures for this situation at the moment. She said that verbal aggression and physical violence had increased by 125% in the past year. So in November 2020, there were 80 reported incidents of violence and aggression, which I actually already think sounds quite high. But in November 2021, this had doubled to 190. So clearly this is a big problem here, but it's not just happening in Oxford. This is a problem that we are seeing nationwide, especially as families aren't able to go in with their sick family members when they enter an accident and emergency department. And Katie told me that she hopes that other trusts will lead by their example and help to try and keep their staff safe. And of course, drive home the message that there is no excuse for violence towards NHS staff.
Okay, Ellie Costello, thank you. I find it absolutely stunning that people would go into that sort of situation and be rude, never mind aggressive.
You feel like saying, what has the world come to when we've got to get our nurses and doctors body cams?
I mean, they're people who are there to help us.
Yeah, but it is a huge problem for them, apparently. Really nasty aggression.
If you're a nurse this morning,
help.
if you're an A&E nurse or doctor, get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts on that this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Coming up, we'll take a look at what is and will likely be happening in Ukraine as President Putin is accused of plotting to install a pro-Moscow figure to lead Ukraine's government. First of all, though, the weather.
And it's largely dry for many of us, but mainly cloudy skies are expected too. Looking at the details then, a cloudy morning expected across southwest England. Perhaps a few bright or sunny spells developing as we head towards lunchtime. Highs of about 8 Celsius with light winds for all. Grey skies overhead London and southeast of England too. It should remain dry though, feeling chilly with highs of 7. Winds remaining pretty light. Wales should see some of the brightest weather. Cloud will come and go, but there will be sunny spells, staying pretty chilly though. The Midlands largely cloudy, should stay dry. There could be a few glimmers of sunshine from time to time. Temperatures just about 6, winds remaining light throughout. Large amounts of cloud across northern England, the best of any cloud breaks to the east of the Pennines. Temperatures towards the coast about 8 Celsius. Patchy rain and brisk winds will continue across northwest Scotland through the day. Drier conditions are expected elsewhere with some sunshine in the east. Maximum temperatures of about 7 Celsius. Now, moving on to Northern Ireland, should remain dry through the rest of the morning. Some bright or sunny breaks developing by lunchtime. Temperatures of about 7 Celsius and the winds will stay pretty light. Often cloudy through the rest of the day across the UK. Rain and strong winds continuing across northwest Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It is 8:23. Good to have you with us this morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV, on your radio, on your phone, online, wherever you want to be.
Don and Paula, hi Don and Paula, are watching us over dinner because they're in New Zealand. Isn't that amazing? And
nice.
Tracy says, we're watching you from a cold but sunny Paphos in Cyprus.
Oh, how nice.
Cold, really?
I don't care if it's cold. If it's sunny, that's nice.
Oh.
I've got to say, Jonathan says, Stephen, I didn't know you were from Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria. I'm also from Barrow and still there now. Nice to see a local on my favourite news channel. I'm from Newton-in-Furness.
Newton-in-Furness, is that near Barrow-in-Furness?
It's a tiny village outside Dalton-in-Furness, which is outside Barrow-in-Furness.
What's Furness?
It's the peninsula.
Oh, is it indeed?
It's a little peninsula, the Furness Peninsula, yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. You learn something, don't you? We're going around the country at the moment.
Beautiful part of the world, so morning to you, Jonathan.
Because Julie says, morning, guys, quick message to let you know I'm watching from my holiday lodge at Ribby Hall. Don't know where that is.
No, I was just looking that up, actually, on my trusty phone.
Ribby Hall?
Ribby Hall, if I zoom out, it is... Oh, it's near Blackpool.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
nice.
good morning, Julie.
I'm often in Lytham. I like Lytham. I've got my in-laws in Lytham.
Is that Lytham St Anne's?
Well, it's...
Oh,
Lytham,
shouldn't have asked, should I?
No, Lytham and St Anne's are two separate places.
I didn't know that. I always thought it was Lytham, St Anne's.
No. So they're right Lytham and St Anne's are right next to each other.
Oh, I
so
see.
people just say Lytham, St Anne's.
Oh, I see. I didn't realise that. You see, you can learn something. It's never too late to learn. Christina says, I'm based in Dubai. I love the news show. Great. And you're all doing a superb job. I just think we're whizzing around the world, which is brilliant.
I love that, which is not what I expected when I started working at GB News. I didn't think there'd be such an international following.
And you learn something new every day. We were talking about this earlier, that people come from extraordinary places with lovely names, Lytham St Anne's or Barrow-in-Furness. I didn't know about the Furness Peninsula. I used to live very near, and my old editor on the Bridgewater Mercury used to live in a place called Screech Owl in Somerset.
Screech Owl?
Isn't that a wonderful name for a village?
Love
Screech Owl. So good morning. If you're watching in Screech Owl, get in touch. Love to hear from you. But so maybe you live somewhere with a really unusual, weird or wonderful name. Love to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We're going to have to double check them before we read them out, though, in case anyone tries to be a bit naughty.
Yes. No, Screech Owl is a real place.
I'll be getting my Google Maps out to check them.
Yeah, actually, you need to get on that, just to make sure.
Now, this is one which might get you emailing in as well this morning. It's all a bit woke gone mad. George Orwell's novel 1984 is a chilling warning on the dangers of groupthink, censorship and the police state. But staff at the University of Northampton don't seem to have got the message. They've issued a trigger warning for the novel on the grounds that it contains explicit material that some students may find offensive and upsetting.
It's weird, if you're studying literature and you're studying 1984, do you really need that? Such material includes what they call challenging issues related to violence, gender, sexuality, class, race, abuse, sexual abuse, political ideas and offensive language.
I mean, yeah, political issues in 1984, never.
No. It's odd. Surely you know before you read it if you're studying at university.
Well,
you know what's in store for you, don't you?
Yes, there's plenty of books in this module which is called Identity Under Construction. They're also been given the potential to be offensive and upsetting, including the Samuel Beckett play Endgame, the graphic novel V for Vendetta by Alan Moore, and Sexing the Cherry by David Lloyd and Jeanette Winterson.
Mark Haddon's The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime similarly comes with a warning that it includes the death of an animal, ableism and disability, and offensive language. It's a bit like saying I'm going to read Animal Farm and saying this book could be, offensive to pigs or humans.
I mean, it's crackers, isn't it? Or, a packet of peanuts saying this may contain peanuts.
Yeah. Absolutely, yes. Wokeism, as they say. Does it drive you mad?
Sometimes these things are just ridiculous. And I think that far too many people are so easily offended. I think people almost want to be offended these days.
I think that's what it's about, because you think, well, if you're at university, you should be intelligent enough to be able to sort of make that deduction yourself. So maybe it is somebody trying to be offensive in a way, or offended, or just trying to stir things up.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is a crackers one. A robot vacuum cleaner, which I'd love, but I haven't got one.
Oh, I've had one. I've got a story to tell you about robot vacuum cleaners.
But anyway, this robot vacuum cleaner has gone on the run after slipping out of its travel lodge home. It's a Roomba. It failed to stop at the front door of the hotel in Cambridge on Thursday and is still at large.
No.
Apparently. Staff at the Travelodge announced the robot was on the loose on social media, saying it made a run for it and could be anywhere.
Hoovering up anything.
Anything at all. Well-wishers are hoping the vacuum enjoyed its travels, as it has no natural predators in the wild. It was eventually found under a shrub, with the hotel confirming it's now sitting happily on a shelf with the rest of its robot family. It couldn't have got very far. It would run out of juice.
Well, absolutely. In the end, I had one of those, and a very new dog, who left a little message in the corner of the room, and the Roomba didn't know that, so it woke itself up, because they do at a certain time, and it hoovered. When I got downstairs, I couldn't believe the smell. I couldn't believe the smell. The Roomba had run over said little package and just run it all over the carpet, all over everything. Yeah. So the entire floor was covered in what little Ellie had left by mistake.
Your house for a cup of tea.
So not only did I have to have cleaners in to clean the rugs and the floor and everything, but the Roomba itself, I looked at it and thought, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
And so I put on a pair of marigolds and I took it apart, cleaned every bit of it, put it back.
And did it work?
No, I had 3 screws left over. You know how you always do? And so it never really worked after that. It went in the bin.
That's why they don't sell Roombas in IKEA, because you can't put them together
Yes,
yourself.
exactly. Yeah, you can't. But, yes. If you get one of those, make sure that you've got not a new dog, a dog who is totally house-trained, because otherwise it can be very messy.
There you go.
I thought you'd like to know that as you're eating your cornflakes this morning. Sorry about that.
I'm slightly sick now, so we'll take a break. Back in a couple of minutes with the newspapers. Nigel Nelson and Petri Hoskin.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It is 8:32. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, live across the UK, on your TV and your radio, and live across everywhere else.
Yeah, even to our viewers in New Zealand and Dubai.
Yes, we're on Tinternet. Don't you know?
Brilliant. It's time to go through the papers now. Joining us this morning is Nigel Nelson and Petri Hoskin. Hello.
Sorry,
Good morning.
I didn't scroll up for that bit. Sorry, well remember.
No, it's just as well I know them. Yeah.
This is one of the perils of this job is doing our own.
Yeah, it's got the clicker.
Words.
We could wave at you.
Could do. I know we keep forgetting to do it, don't we?
I'm a bit worried about you because you thought it was 6 o'clock 2 hours ago, half an hour ago, rather. Oh, no. I don't know where I am either now.
Oh, I know. It's all going pear-shaped.
It is 8:33 because it says it on a big clock over there.
I know.
There is the biggest clock I've ever seen.
Yes.
Just there.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's funny how we don't see it from time to time.
It's funny, I missed that one.
Yeah.
Nigel, let's have a look at, I don't know what paper it's in, but the LGBT
Yeah, this is the
apology.
Sunday Mirror, and I'm being a bit naughty here by choosing one of my own stories. But it's an important campaign that these are LGBT armed forces personnel who were jailed or dismissed for being gay. And although homosexuality was legalised in Britain in 1967, until 2000, it was still a criminal offence in the armed forces. Now, at last, after all these years, they're beginning to get justice. So already Priti Patel has offered pardons for them. There's now going to be a review of what they have suffered since, because they lost pensions, they lost earnings.
So what, were they just kicked out of the armed forces?
Some were kicked out, some were actually court-martialed and jailed for being gay. And there would be things like, like disgusting shaming ceremonies where a military police sergeant would rip the medals off their uniforms before they were thrown out.
You can't believe that actually happened in our own
No,
lifetime,
and also,
can
no,
you?
exactly. And only a few years ago. So the next stage now is that the big campaign is to try and get the compensation that these people deserve.
They need it because they would have struggled to get jobs and things afterwards with the criminal
They did, because they had a criminal record there. So one guy I talked to who was an army nurse, he had to declare his criminal conviction each time he applied for NHS jobs. So, yes, I mean, some of the shame that went with it, they were terribly proud of their service, but ashamed about why they got chucked out. So there was one woman I spoke to whose parents, she came from a military family, she'd never told them the real reason why she had been chucked out of the army, and yet the parents were perfectly happy with her being a lesbian. That caused no problem, but she couldn't bring herself.
It was the fact that she was dismissed from
It was the shame.
Yeah.
But anyway, what we've got is that Johnny Mercer, the former Veterans Minister, has come on side the campaign, and given his inside knowledge of the MOD, one rather hopes now these people will get the compensation they deserve.
Yeah, really
It's finding them, though, isn't it, as well? Finding those that were dismissed for this reason. You've got to ask them to come forward. And this has been going on for such a long time that you might suspect that some may want to keep it from their families now, or they may have changed circumstances or whatever it is. So there will be those that don't get compensation for this, and some of those that were medically discharged for being gay as well. There's circumstances. So I do hope that people are encouraged to come forward because they deserve reparation. They deserve
what sort of compensation might they get?
Well, I mean, the European Court, which actually European Court of Human Rights, which lifted the gay ban, they looked at some test cases, and there was one woman there who they worked on the basis of lost pension, projected earnings, £445,000.
And there's about 20,000 members of the armed forces, isn't there, roughly?
Roughly 20,000.
Yeah.
And as Petrie says, the difficulty is the ones who were just dismissed, if they were dismissed under the catch-all prejudicial to military discipline, you've now got to try and go through the records to check whether that was as a result of their sexuality.
Yeah. No, it's not.
But there is a charity fighting with pride.
Well, good that it's changed.
Yeah.
And that's.
But it's taken a long time still.
Well, hasn't it just? That's why they're so upset that it's taken all those years. We're over 20 years since the gay ban was lifted, and they still haven't sorted out.
Can you think of the effect it would have on you mentally and emotionally to have that, as you say, shame, that feeling of shame,
and things
which
like
you don't
pension
deserve.
going as well, that you've put money away for you.
Well, also it's things like marching to the cenotaph. For the first time in November, they're allowed their own contingent to the cenotaph. For many of them, it's the first time they'd worn their military berets since they were chucked out. And they could actually wear their medals with pride, which they couldn't before because they were in disgrace.
And yet they had served.
And a lost career.
Yes.
Everything.
No, absolutely. Petrie.
Talking of a lost career.
I was going to say, the words right out of my mouth. Jeremy Corbyn may get the party whip again.
Well, yes, this is left-wingers. The National Executive Committee will this week seek to challenge Sir Keir Starmer's ambition to draw a line under the Corbyn era. They are saying that because you've got people crossing the floor, like Christian Wakeford, who was a Tory, is allowed now in, that Jeremy Corbyn should be returned to his former position, and the argument is weak not to do that. And of course, the left of the party will be absolutely thrilled with the idea that Jeremy Corbyn can once again be an MP, so he can sit as an MP. But the thing is that Sir Keir Starmer, this is the last thing that he will want, because recently we've been talking, a lot of commentators have been saying, Labour Party's success. It's not that the Labour Party has been successful, it's that the Tory party has been disastrous, that there's been this change in the polling. So because there's nothing that Labour has done recently to cry we've been successful in that, apart from sit there and watch the Tories collapse. So Sir Keir Starmer will be really concerned if the NEC do get any purchase on this, because he's been trying to draw a line under it. Look at the changes that he made to people to try and get rid of the Corbyn.
And as Tony Blair has been saying, Labour needs to grab the central ground now if they're to make a surge ahead.
Yes.
And
they've actually got to create some success.
Taking Jeremy Corbyn back in would not be a good look for them at the moment.
It would not help the new whatever they're calling them, just Labour. But you know what I mean, it's not new Labour.
It's not new Labour.
But you know what I mean, new old Labour, old new Labour, whatever. But yeah, the idea that Jeremy Corbyn could come back in and start again, in the view of many, to poison the pot will not be one that Keir Starmer is looking forward to. What do you think, Nigel?
I don't think actually Jeremy Corbyn would poison the pot. I would like to see him back in the Labour Party, but there is...
Why?
Because he's given his life to the party. The Labour Party ought to be a broad church and should be able to accommodate left, right and centre.
He didn't, though.
No, I was going to say that I appreciate in his day an awful lot of centrists got thrown out or had to leave the party. So I'm not saying that it was handled ideally then, but someone like Jeremy Corbyn, I think, should come back. The tricky bit, of course, is the allegations of anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism, I was going to say.
And what he also has to do is be prepared to make a proper apology for what happened in his day.
I don't think he would do that, though.
Well, at the moment he won't. That's one of the problems.
Yeah.
But I don't believe for a moment Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite. I do think that a culture was created at the time where
Turning
there were
a blind eye to it,
anti-Semitic people in the party.
I mean, you can't say that he didn't know about it. So he may not be an anti-Semite himself, I don't know.
But he never dealt with it.
But he didn't deal with it.
Yeah.
So by association, if you stand by and watch something happening, then as the leader, I suspect you have to carry some of that guilt. And of course, you've got Ken Livingstone. Should he be allowed, I don't know if an apology would be enough if it's a forked tongue apology. If it's I'm not saying I didn't mean that.
That an apology ought to be genuine. Anyone who apologises ought to be genuine about it. I'm not sure Boris Johnson was the other day when he was talking about parties.
No.
But yes, I mean, certainly it should be genuine. I just think it's time really to move on from the old battles between left and right, Jeremy Corbyn v the new Labour Party as it is now. Keir Starmer is very much in control. There's no suggestion that that the left wing will undermine him. So on the basis of that, I think they can actually extend the hand of friendship.
Yeah, but they never do move on, do they?
No.
Well, that's the trouble with politics.
I don't think the Jewish community would be very happy with this.
No. Talking and moving on, though, Nigel, in the Observer, on Wednesday, of course, Plan B ends.
It does indeed.
But the Observer's saying, got to keep wearing masks.
Well, it's not the Observer saying it so much as charities who look after vulnerable people. So things like Kidney Care UK, Blood Cancer UK, and they're saying that if we do keep wearing masks in crowded places, then it will protect some of the people who are most vulnerable. Now, I think masks are hugely controversial, and as a result, we've done rather stupid things about them. So, for instance, a lot of people are going around just wearing surgical masks. They're basically useless. The kind of mask that you ought to wear is an industrial mask that goes right round your nose and mouth, seals it in, and that will give you 95% protection from COVID, and also the people around you 95% protection. So it seems to me we need to be sort of re-educated about the use of masks, and although they won't be mandatory
now.
Well,
it isn't, is it?
Pardon?
Is that mask called the N90?
That's an FP22.
Oh, right.
Lord.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're the ones the scientists recommend, and not the sort of flimsy surgical ones. I'll carry on wearing a mask in shops, on trains, in crowded places. Obviously not in the studio.
Don't you think it's going to be harder to do that? I mean, I want to make that decision as well, to continue wearing masks. But I think it's going to become harder for us to do it. You're going to find yourself being poked fun at or being shouted at.
I'm sure it will, yeah. I mean, I think that...
You're going to be seen as the weird one.
But do you not think in the future that when the cold season comes, it would be hugely beneficial to have a mask?
I can't see us doing it.
I can't see myself doing it.
I mean, the only reason I like the mask is because I don't have to put makeup on when I go out.
Absolutely.
Well, you have to put it on around your eyes.
No, not if you wear sunglasses.
I wear sunglasses, thank you.
Sunglasses and a mask.
We've got it sussed,
yes, we have.
Look, we've got time for one more paper, Petri.
Oh, I've got to do this one then. I fancy this one. This is a story that I don't know why, but it shouldn't be funny, but it is for me. Two men strolled into a post office, propped up a corpse against the counter, a dead man, in a bid to claim his pension. And it was only the bizarre scam was foiled when the post office staff said, "Is he all right? Is the old man all right?" And they checked him and found that he was actually dead. But these two... I know it's...
Where was this?
There's something wrong with my parrot.
This is in Ireland. Yeah, this is from a film, isn't it? They thought, do you know what? It was in Ireland, in Carlow. The staff at the post office checked the elderly man, and to their horror found he was dead. An ambulance crew was called, obviously, and he was taken away. No arrests have been made so far, although you could say it was attempted fraud. Apart from the dead man who's been taken away.
Well, good.
So attempted fraud, and I think mucking around with a dead body is another word for it, but is another
interfering
crime.
with the proper...
With so yeah, but they audaciously thought, he's died, let's go and get his pension.
See if we can get his pension.
Took him into the post office, propped him up against the counter.
How could you... How do
you do it? Doesn't it sound like something that you might have happened when you came out of the pub? You'd always sit in the bar and say, "Hey, this is a good idea. That old Fred over there has passed away, but we can still make use of him." And take him down there. I do feel sorry for the family there. I think they're going through...
Isn't there a great Irish film about a lottery winner?
There is, yes.
I'm trying to remember where they all...
He was dead in his...
still alive.
He was found dead in his armchair, but he'd won the lottery. And so all his friends sort of Yes.
Yes.
It was
Anyway,
a very, very good movie. But it does sound... I think this is going to turn out to be a publicity stunt for a similar movie. Is it?
I think so.
I don't know.
True. It's absolutely true.
That
There's
is
two men.
stranger than truth.
That's stranger than truth. They're saying that no arrests have been made yet, but the two men in their 30s have been interviewed.
Right. Well, there you go.
Well,
I mean, the mind boggles.
It does.
Frankly.
And that's queer as folk.
That's very true. It's
Really,
very true.
very
Petri
strange.
Hoskin, Nigel Nelson. I'd say it's been a pleasure,
Well,
but, you know, it's been all right.
Oh,
It's been all
It's
right.
been an experience.
Feelings
Thanks very much.
A great experience. Thank you very much for coming in. But like I say, next time you come in, a nice cheese toasty would go down very
I'd
well.
like a cheese toasty, thank you.
No, it's not for you.
No.
I'm the waiter.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Bring you in for a reason, Nigel.
Yeah, thank you. What time is it now? 8:46.
Yes. There have been reports of several dead swans being found at Attenborough Nature Reserve in Nottinghamshire over the last few weeks.
Yes, Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust says it's likely caused by bird flu and warned that the visitors, if you see any dead or sick birds, do not touch them.
Yeah, well, Will Hollis has this report.
Every year, thousands of people come to Attenborough Nature Reserve to watch the wild world. Now you're being asked to take care if you do. Recent discoveries of at least half a dozen dead and sick swans, plus other birds, makes Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust believe that avian flu has landed here.
We had reports relating to a gull, which could have been bird flu, and then we had a report of a dead swan, which has been reported as a possible case of avian flu. Then yesterday, we had a report of a larger number, possibly up to half a dozen swans. We're still looking into that report. We haven't found any further bodies.
It's not uncommon for wintering birds to arrive in Britain with avian flu, transferring it to local wildlife. However, this season, authorities are seeing a record outbreak. Where infected birds are found in captivity, like on poultry farms, the Department for Rural Affairs sets up control zones, inspects, and humanely calls the birds on site. This has happened at places in Charnwood in Leicestershire, plus East Lindsey on the Lincolnshire coastline, as well as many other sites in Britain, but most of them, at least 70, have been found in England. DEFRA also carefully watches for cases in wild birds at places like Attenborough. The suspected sickness here has been reported, but there's been no confirmation yet.
You've seen lots of the headlines, and there's been various protection zones. They all relate to the sort of the domestic rearing of birds. On the wild bird front, all the advice is that it's perfectly safe to be out and about visiting nature reserves, being in the countryside, and going about your business as normal, as long as you follow the basic advice, which is not to touch any dead birds or sick birds, because it is spread by contact, direct contact, so that you can avoid that. As an extra precaution at Attenborough, we are asking people to refrain from feeding the birds at the moment, because that does cause the birds to congregate close together and could actually help spread the disease amongst birds.
Avian flu can transfer to humans. However, the risk is low. The government says not to touch any dead or sick birds and to contact DEFRA where they're found. Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust says it is safe to continue visiting its nature reserves. Will Hollis from Attenborough in the East Midlands.
All right, let's change tack somewhat, should we? Sorry, I was straight in because I've been chatting to Stephanie Tetchy while that package was playing, rather than paying attention, which I should have done. But she's got me right in the mood for a whole load of showbiz.
Oh, right, gossip, good. What's around?
Right, well, obviously we know what's going on with Katie Price at the moment, that she could potentially be facing some jail time after she breached her restraining order against her ex-husband's fiancé. Luckily, before Christmas, Kate avoided jail time for drink driving, but now she's gone and put her foot in it by texting her ex-husband's fiancé, and she had put a restraining order on Katie 2 years ago. So I'm not sure what Katie was thinking. I think she thinks she can get away with it, which I don't think she should, because she constantly pushes the law to its brink. And I think it's time she
had a suspended sentence, didn't she?
Yeah.
So she's probably in breach of that.
Yeah,
so.
well, I know, probably more than likely she'll just get a slap on the wrist and that's it.
I wonder.
She just deserves a bit more than that. But also, Cornwall's set to have a new superstar resident.
Is it?
In the name of Harry Styles from One Direction. So he had a nice winter staycation there, and now in the papers they're saying that he's looking for a new property in Cornwall.
So he's house hunting in Cornwall?
Yeah, he's house hunting, apparently with a budget of £10 £10 million.
10 million quid?
Yeah. I don't know how it's going to...
minted, is it?
Yeah,
That could buy something quite big in Cornwall,
It's all
I would have
that
thought.
One Direction money. But I don't know how that's going to go down with the locals, because I remember during, like, lockdown and how everyone was flocking to Cornwall. Someone like Harry Styles, he constantly has all his fans chasing him wherever he goes. So Cornwall could become the new hotspot in the UK because of Harry Styles.
They might not like it.
Yeah.
How do you have your scones in Cornwall? Is it jam first and cream, or is it cream and jam?
Yeah, but is it a scone or a scone? Even more controversial. Don't start that again.
Oh, dear. Now, what's going on with Adele? Because has she been making more apologies?
Yeah, you know, this is like the story, you're like, stop Adele. I do love Adele. But she's now gone into full damage control now over pulling all 24 dates for her Las Vegas residencies. So yesterday she was FaceTiming fans to apologise, which is good. Can you imagine getting a FaceTime from Adele? It must help ease the blow a little bit. But she's been promoting to them free drinks. But she said if you're underage, you can't get
She's been FaceTiming them directly herself?
Yeah, FaceTiming a few of them, which obviously made the papers. And obviously she's also been promoting her merchandise.
Well, that's right. Apparently she said, all right, I'm not going to be at Caesar's Palace, but my shop is.
I think
And you pay $80 for a bottle of Adele wine.
I think it's so cheeky. I'm like, you know what, you're not going to appear on stage. No one should be buying your merchandise for the tour that never happened.
Yeah.
So that's a bit bad. But also, you know, the papers, they weren't just going to accept when Adele said she pulled it because of COVID problems. So now the papers like The Sun have been digging and digging, and apparently she fell out with her set designer.
Right.
And that's what the whole big thing's been about. Apparently she wasn't happy with the way the stage was looking, and it was all last minute. She already suffers from anxiety and panic attacks, and that was the final icing on the cake for her. So, you know, I think there's more that's
there is
going
much
to
more
come
to
out
from
it,
this
yeah.
story.
It's a shame, though. It's particularly a shame for the fans, but it's a shame if Adele has let everything sort of get that much of a crisis. She really did look upset. Should we talk sport?
Let's.
Yes. And it was a busy day yesterday with lots of things going on.
You know what? Normally, I'm not sure I can compete with Showbiz, but I think I'm going to have a go today. It was a hugely eventful day. We had a drone camera above the stadium at Brentford's Community Stadium. They played against Wolverhampton Wanderers, and the referee spotted this drone, or it was spotted by somebody in the sky, probably about 50 feet above the ground, and unbeknown to most people inside the stadium, including the players, that's a real security risk. So the players had to actually come off the pitch for 25 minutes while they found out, well, it just had to disappear. They still haven't found out where it came from. It's probably a fan. It looked fairly innocent. I've seen these kind of contraptions before.
Yeah, but you don't know, do you? That's the
You
point.
certainly don't. Also, with the proximity to Heathrow, it's very risky as well. I mean, Brentford's just probably about 4 miles away from the main terminals there. So very risky. The players had to warm up again when they came back on, which I've not seen before in an awful long time.
What did they say to the crowd?
They put an announcement over the PA system and saying that there's a drone camera above the stadium, so we're going to have a delay indefinitely. So it was 25 minutes. I think they just had to wait for it to basically just disappear, but they still haven't got to the bottom of what it was. I mean, you can control these things from quite a distance away. So it's not like you can go outside the stadium, look outside the concourse on the roads and say, oh, yeah, it's that guy there who's holding it. They can be doing it from a period of, from a distance away. I'm not sure if they're going to get to the bottom of it now because he's probably scarpered. But difficult day elsewhere as well. I mean, there were bottles thrown on the pitch at Aston Villa players.
That's
by
right.
Everton.
Yes, there are pictures in the paper.
That's right. Yeah, some real toxic atmosphere at Goodison Park yesterday as they lost again with Duncan Ferguson in charge. Bill Kenwright, formerly of Coronation Street, he's the chairman at Everton now. Has been for some years. 76 years old, confronted by fans on the pavement after the game. Tried to talk to them, tried to engage with them, but they kind of shouted him down. There was an opportunity there to get some answers from him because there have been mistakes made at Everton in the recent past, no doubt about it. But they didn't.
Do the police follow these things through? If somebody's hurling a bottle onto the ground, there must be camera shots.
Oh, yeah.
They must be able to identify them.
It's much easier to identify culprits now because there's CCTV all around. I suppose my difficulty is stadium bans. That's normally what happens. But how do you
police it?
How do you really stop someone getting into a ground? I mean, when you go into a turnstile, you can stop them buying tickets with a credit card or something, but it's a bit of a fake punishment in a way because if you go into the turnstile, and unless the turnstile operator's got a whole picture on the wall of every person that's been banned in the last 30-odd years, how are they going to know?
Yeah.
It's something that sounds good when you announce it in court or you announce it in the newspaper or in the media or elsewhere, but is it enforceable? I would say no. And in the Championship as well, we had a delay of 16 minutes, QPR 1-2-1 at Coventry, but a steward took ill in the crowd. 16-minute delay there. So all sorts of problems all over the league yesterday.
Lots of delays. That's not even enough time to go and get another pint, is it?
16 minutes? No, not with the queues.
Not with the queues that must have formed.
No, it'd be all right if you could squeeze an extra pint in.
The prices are pretty bad. Anyway, Chelsea. Oh, by the way, Chelsea are playing today. Big game for them against Tottenham. Their problem is that they're giving up. They're taking the lead and losing games quite easily. And they're saying, Thomas Tuchel, don't let him take your dog for a walk because he's so bad at looking after Leeds.
Okay.
Very good.
Ending on a high note.
Ada McGee, Stephanie Tetchy, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Indeed. Coming up in the next hour for you, we'll get more views on your views on what could happen to Boris Johnson in relation to Partygate. All that coming up after the weather. And it's largely dry for many of us, but mainly cloudy skies are expected too. Looking at the details then, a cloudy morning expected across southwest England. Perhaps a few bright or sunny spells developing as we head towards lunchtime. Highs of about 8 Celsius with light winds for all. Grey skies overhead London and southeast of England too. It should remain dry though, feeling chilly with highs of 7. Winds remaining pretty light. Wales should see some of the brightest weather. Cloud will come and go, but there will be sunny spells, staying pretty chilly though. The Midlands largely cloudy, should stay dry. There could be a few glimmers of sunshine from time to time. Temperatures just about 6, winds remaining light throughout. Large amounts of cloud across northern England, the best of any cloud breaks to the east of the Pennines. Temperatures towards the coast about 8 Celsius. Patchy rain and brisk winds will continue across northwest Scotland through the day. Drier conditions are expected elsewhere with some sunshine in the east. Maximum temperatures of about 7 Celsius. Now, moving on to Northern Ireland, should remain dry through the rest of the morning. Some bright or sunny breaks developing by lunchtime. Temperatures of about 7 Celsius and the winds will stay pretty light. Often cloudy through the rest of the day across the UK. Rain and strong winds continuing across northwest Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning. It is 9 o'clock on the 23rd of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Whether you're watching us in Swansea in South Wales, whether you're listening to us in Dudley in the West Midlands, and maybe you're even watching us on YouTube, anywhere in the world, Lisbon, Northern Ireland, or Dubai, or Marbella.
Yeah.
Join us.
Got loads of messages to read out later on from where you are. It's frankly
all over the world.
amazing.
It is amazing. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Some of you may also be catching up via the GB News app whilst travelling to work, and you could be a Brit abroad, as many people are, getting in touch with us this morning. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, and it is nice that if you are watching and you need to leave the house, pop the radio on and just keep going. We're not going anywhere for the next hour, and of course our coverage is on all day today. Our main news for you, and Boris Johnson continues to fight for his political life as more Tory MPs call for a criminal investigation into Partygate.
Accident and emergency staff in hospitals in Oxford are going to start wearing body cams this week due to the rise in assault cases from people visiting. Our reporter is on the ground at one of the hospitals trialling the idea.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has warned Russia could attack Ukraine at short notice. We'll try and get more details on how Britain would respond, what it would mean for us.
You can join in any of our discussions, of course, by emailing gbviews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews.
So there you go. You are literally all over the shop this morning, which I love. Pamela says, thanks for a great morning show. I'm listening to you in Boston, USA via the app.
Oh, that's great. Hi, Pamela.
That must be in the middle of the night there. What are you doing?
Well, goodness knows, we'd like to know, actually. Yeah. Tell us what you're doing. Why are you up? David says, Hoya, I am watching you from Marbella in Spain on your app.
Hola.
Hola. Did I say Hoya?
It did,
Who says Hoya?
I
don't know either, just me. Sheila says, I'm proofreading my husband's latest crime novel in southeast Austria, and we're enjoying your programme immensely. And a picture of a snowy Austria. Maybe that's from your window?
It's beautiful.
It's what the picture we can see anyway is of this beautiful, beautiful snowy landscape outside. What is Sheila's window, I think?
I love Austria. Vienna, I'm a particular fan of Vienna. Absolutely gorgeous. Norman asks, morning Norman, and I get this a lot on social media. Morning Stephen and Anne, how is Timmy? You've not mentioned him for a while. That's my cat.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got to know Timmy because when you were broadcasting from your home during lockdown.
He liked to make an appearance.
Why do cats always want to walk all over what you're doing?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, so many people, it happened so much, of course, during when people were Zooming all sorts of things during lockdown. But cats don't just want to sit there and look at you or purr or just be there. They want to walk all over what you're doing.
Yeah, they do. Keyboards, get your laptop out, you've absolutely had it. Interesting on the jabs and jobs and, of course, the NHS vaccine mandate, which may be coming into question now, and whether that actually goes ahead. There were protests in London yesterday. Jeff raises a really serious point about holidays. You can't go unless you have certain vaccinations. Why is everyone ignoring this when talking about mandatory vaccination? Well, I guess...
But it's true, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
we're already a society that says to do certain things you have to be vaccinated.
Yeah,
so why the fuss about the COVID vaccination? And Rosie says, the only reason I might not vote Tory in the next election is if they U-turn on compulsory vaccinations for NHS staff.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
Well, after one Tory MP crossed the floor to Labour, there are now rumours that more may follow.
Yeah, the report into Partygate by Sue Gray should be released this week, and it's likely to add fuel to the fire around the Prime Minister.
So what does it take to leave your political party and set up elsewhere? We're joined now by Lord David Owen, former Foreign Secretary, who was one of the Gang of Four, if you remember, who left Labour in 1981 to form the SDP. A very good morning to you, Lord Owen.
Good morning to you.
How do you feel about the recent crossing of the floor? I mean, what do you think the future holds for that particular MP? And do you think there are more who want to do the same?
And it's many years since I left politics. I'm ready to talk to you about Russia, but I'm not going into domestic British politics. I've had that, and I'm now outside the whole issue. I'm outside. I'm a member of the House of Lords, but that's more of a joke. It's not a serious place. It's up to members of Parliament, and particularly now Tory MPs, to see their way through this crisis. It's doing no good for the country, and they need to resolve it, but I'm not getting involved myself.
OK. Well, look, fair enough. In that case, let's ask you about the situation with Ukraine, because we're issuing a lot of threats. There's a lot of rhetoric floating about, but what we're not getting is any clear answer as to what Britain may actually do unilaterally, if we can do anything unilaterally, should Vladimir Putin decide to invade Ukraine.
Well, the government has authorized sending defense weapons to Ukraine, and we've sent very useful anti-tank defense weaponry, and if we can send more, we should do so. So we've taken a clear line that we are on the side of Ukraine and we will help them as far as possible in defense. But we are not going to get engaged in this war, nor is NATO. And in that sense, Ukraine has to deal with it to some extent on their own. But they're not on their own politically, and we've made it very clear to Russia that if Putin does invade Ukraine, there will be very serious economic sanctions against Russia. And this time, I think they will really hurt.
Enough, do you think, to dissuade Putin from invasion?
No, I don't think he will be dissuaded by the threat of sanctions. That's all we can do. But he's also put on the table a very complex but important negotiated path out of this crisis. And that's why the American Secretary of State Blinken was over here, has come actually repeatedly to Europe in the last 4 weeks. And there is no doubt the Americans are coming up with a response agreed by NATO. But what I do think we now need to do is to discuss our response with Ukraine, but also Georgia, because what the Russians are proposing is there should be missile withdrawals, cruise missiles with nuclear weapons that they have in Kaliningrad, and we have American missiles in Poland and Romania. Now, that would not be sufficient. There has to be a much greater commitment of Russia that in any of these negotiations, they will start immediately to pull back their forces. So we are not negotiating very complex and important issues of confidence and of stability for Europe against the threat of Russian tanks sitting on the Ukrainian border. So there's a lot of difficulty ahead. It may involve a meeting directly between President Biden and President Putin. But certainly we should follow the diplomatic route while at the same time giving all support we can to Ukraine. This is not a fight we can involve ourselves in, nor NATO, but we can make it clear whose side we are on. And we are utterly opposed to a Russian invasion of Ukraine, and they will pay a very heavy price if they go ahead with it.
But what about playing the longer game and the impact on the UK? Because, the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has talked about the idea that there may be a Russian plot, if you like, to try and install a pro-Kremlin Prime Minister in Ukraine, which is what they had previously, of course, and when he was removed, that's when they moved into certain parts of Ukraine.
She's right to warn us of this. This is a traditional Russian tactic.
Well, yes, but what? Forgive me for interrupting.
Try and change the government.
Forgive me for interrupting, but what are the implications for the UK if that is allowed to happen? If Russia gains further strength, regains its old territories, if you like, that has to have some pretty significant international implications, doesn't it?
Yes, it would be damaging in the short term, but the Ukrainians, the more Russia puts pressure on them, the more it weakens their former link with Russia. Remember, Ukraine was effectively part of the Soviet Union. Remember, there are Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine. But all the time Putin is doing this, you can see it in the young people's response. When you get Ukrainians, young Ukrainians, they say, well, I wasn't very interested, but I'm damned if I'm going to sit on my butt and just allow Russia to go on with this. And they're joining up to fight in the armed forces. And I think Russia are playing around with their relationship with Ukraine, and it's changing hour by hour as Ukraine see that the old links have been damaged. And there are also, of course, a lot of Ukrainian family links with Russia. This is a very complex issue, and we need to use all our skills, mobilize our defense forces, mobilize our diplomacy, and Liz Truss was quite right to warn of traditional Soviet strategy, try to destabilize the government and bring them over onto their side. I don't think it will succeed this time. I think Ukraine is much more independent than they were even 3 or 4 years ago.
They do have a very large army, I think, in Ukraine. So is your feeling that if diplomacy works, what do you think is going to be the likely outcome? Or will it just be sort of stalemate and increased tension, stalemate, increased tension for the next few years?
Well, and you need to know what's in Putin's mind, and there are very few people who know what is in his mind. He's 69. I think he's beginning to look for a political legacy. He wants to leave behind a strong Russia. I think that it's possible that this wider settlement, which they've negotiated strategy, which they put on the table, they know perfectly well that many of their demands are quite intolerable and NATO will not accept it. We've already made that clear. But the Russian way is to go in big with demands that are unrealistic and settle in and around the negotiating table. And it's an important and dangerous situation, but I think the Americans on our behalf are handling this very well, and it will be necessary for Germany to rally very strongly. It's a big test for this new German government, but they've got to be ready to make it clear to Russia that the pipeline under the Baltic Sea from St. Petersburg will not be opened while they are conducting the policy that they are doing against Ukraine. There has to be good relationships with Ukraine as well as Russia for that pipeline to be reopened.
OK. David Owen, it's really good to talk to you this morning.
Yes,
Thanks
thank you
for taking
very much.
the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, well, let's bring you up to date with what else is happening in the world. And US police have confirmed that the stray bullet which killed a British astrophysicist in Georgia had travelled less than 100 yards and through an exterior wall. Dr. Matthew Wilson from Surrey was found with a single gunshot wound to the head in an apartment last Sunday. The local police there say that the death is random and there have been no arrests so far.
The chairman of the Royal College of GPs says compulsory vaccinations for NHS staff in England is not the right way forward and is urging for a delay to the vaccine deadline. Martin Marshall has said it could lead to workforce shortages as staff refuse the jab. It comes as health workers protested against mandatory jabs in London yesterday, laying out their uniforms on the steps of Trafalgar Square.
And Britain has accused the Russian president of plotting to install a pro-Moscow leader as head of the government in Ukraine, amid tension over a possible invasion. In an unusual move, the Foreign Office named a former Ukrainian MP as a potential pro-Kremlin candidate to take over in Kiev. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said the Russian plotting showed the lengths with which the Kremlin was prepared to go to undermine the government in Ukraine.
And the oldest working cinema in the UK has reopened. It's the Electric in Birmingham. It's under new management and it's been closed for more than a year because of COVID. The new owners say the pandemic was the biggest existential crisis that the industry has faced.
I just think it's so terrible, that story about the astrophysicist who was killed in America.
I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you? I mean,
No.
talk about
random. I mean, but
absolutely random. Bad luck.
terrible bad luck. They were apparently he was visiting his girlfriend, and they were in bed, and they heard this cracking or popping or basically shotgun noises outside, and she was worried about it. And he said, "Don't worry about it. It's just kids playing around." And the next thing you know, is the bullet comes through the wall and kills him.
Yeah, it's just a headshot. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
It is. Just awful story.
You never know.
And they've made no arrests so far. I do hope they're looking for the kids, because even if it was, accidental or random, they're still responsible for his death, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Still be a manslaughter charge, surely.
Hope they find them.
Interesting on the NHS mandatory vaccine. Rosie's been in touch this morning, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And so the only reason I might not vote Tory in the next election is if they U-turn on compulsory vaccinations for NHS staff. I believe removing mandatory mask wearing was a step in the wrong direction, but far worse would be for our government to cave in to these rebellious anti-vaxxers. These guys are supposed to be there to get us better, not make us more unwell, or worse, kill us off by infecting us with a dangerous virus.
Well, some people will have that view, that they don't want to be treated by NHS workers who haven't been vaccinated.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting as well about Lord Owen not wanting to talk politics anymore?
Yeah.
Do you know, I find that absolutely fascinating, because he's spent so much... Of course, he was a doctor originally.
Well, see, I didn't know that.
And then went into politics and has spent so much of his life witnessing the sort of shenanigans that's going on at the moment, and has had enough, just had enough.
Maybe he feels he's too far out of the loop.
Yeah, maybe he is.
But still, saying that, he's not far out of the loop when it comes to international politics,
No, he had a
because he
view.
knows his stuff there.
David has rung in and said, if Tony Blair can get a knighthood for what he did, surely Boris can be forgiven a drink.
Tony says, can we see regime change here in the UK? Is that possible?
Barbara says, leave him alone. Remember what happened after Theresa May went. I wonder what she means by that.
And Lawrence says, your guest was wrong about the polling. I don't think which guest that was now. Everyone I've spoken to and on social media supports Boris, and this is a mainstream media pylon to get rid of him. Well,
there's no doubt they are piling in, aren't they?
They are. The problem with social media, though, just to warn you, the problem with social media is you tend to follow people you agree with.
Yes.
And so it becomes a bit of an echo chamber.
Yes, because so you're not always listening to it. Well, you're certainly not listening to a balanced viewpoint all the time, are you?
No, it's very difficult. I've got my suspicions on social media with stuff like that. It's good for connecting with people, but just don't pay a lot of attention to opinions on there.
Yeah, now here's an issue which I find we both find a bit unsettling, doesn't it? The fact that there is such a level of violence in our A&E departments that medical staff working there are going to have to start wearing body cams. Well, it's something they're trialling in Oxford, part of a 3-month trial apparently, to help deter hospital visitors from being so aggressive.
That really is worrying. Let's talk to our reporter Ellie Costello, who's outside the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford. And Ellie, why do they feel this is a necessary move there?
Hi, Anne and Stephen. Well, it is very concerning, isn't it? And it's part of this wider campaign that's being rolled out in Oxford University hospitals this week for the next 3 months. And this wider campaign is called There's No Excuse. And it's this reminder to the public that there's no excuse for violence, for aggression, for threatening behaviour towards NHS staff. It is pretty remarkable that you need a campaign to be reminded of that. But I'm outside the John Radcliffe Hospital here in Oxford, and their frontline A&E staff will be wearing body cameras from this week. They are very small cameras. They're about the size of a camera on an iPhone, and it will go at the front of their uniform. It won't be switched on all the time. It will only be switched on when somebody is starting to appear violent or aggressive towards them, and they will be informed that they are being filmed. So the idea is that it will act as a deterrent to stop people being violent towards NHS staff, and in the worst possible case scenario, it could help to build evidence in a police investigation. But as you asked, Stephen, why is this even needed in the first place? Well, earlier I did speak to Katie Mimpress, who is the matron of the Accident and Emergency Department here, and I asked her why this campaign is needed.
Become pretty much a daily occurrence, and it can be day and night. We've seen a sharp rise in the level of cases of verbal abuse. And thanks to the dedication of our staff in reporting this, we're able to really see that actually from November last year in comparison to the November the year before in 2020, we've more than doubled the incidences of cases of verbal abuse, unfortunately. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, unfortunately. It is multifactorial. Naturally, the pandemic is playing a part in things, and within the emergency department, we don't allow visitors unless it's exceptional circumstances, such as a registered carer or naturally a parent with a child. And people understandably want to accompany their loved ones, and a lot of this is born out of frustration in that they can't. And that's because we're trying to maintain social distancing, we're trying to protect our patients and our staff. So we will just follow national guidelines and trust guidelines and ask for no visitors. And that causes at times a lot of unhappiness, and that can escalate into verbal abuse. There's also times when we experience longer waiting times than we would like. And equally, again, that causes frustrations amongst patients and sometimes the people that are with them. And again, that can turn to verbal abuse.
So that was Katie Mimpress there, who is the matron of the Accident and Emergency Department at this hospital. And as you just heard there, she's saying that incidents of violence and aggression are happening every single day here. And she actually had some figures that she passed on to me. She said that verbal aggression and physical violence had increased by 125% last year. In November 2020, there were 80 reported incidents of physical violence and aggression. In November 2021, that more than doubled to 190. So clearly this is a big problem here, but it's also happening nationwide. As we just heard Katie talking about there, the way things stand at the moment, family members aren't allowed to go in with somebody who is entering accident and emergencies. That is making this problem more severe than it once was. But she's hoping, Katie said when we spoke earlier, that other trusts will look at them as an example and also allow their staff to wear body cameras in order to keep them safe. And ultimately, she hopes that this campaign will drive home that message to the public that there is no excuse for violence towards our NHS staff.
Lee Costello,
Absolutely
thank
no
you.
excuse. I wonder how people will take to it, because I can imagine some people being really worried about going into a hospital where you would hope that you would be patient confidentiality, you know, and there's a camera on you. People will say, "Is that camera on?" or something.
But I mean, you have to. I mean, you have to share your details with these members of staff anyway, don't you? If there's anything being leaked, but I can't imagine that happening. Surely not. Information being leaked like that.
Hope not, yeah. But there will be concerns about that. However, if it protects our frontline NHS workers in A&E from ridiculous and unwanted violence, then that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
It's going to get to the point where we all have to wear body cams all the time.
Yeah, well, I just think it's a disgrace if anyone behaves that way. If you've experienced it, let us know. It'd be quite interesting to get your perspective. Coming up, though, we're going to be talking to the former head of the British Army, General Lord Dannett, to discuss the implications of the potential Russian invasion into Ukraine. Stay with us. And it's largely dry for many of us, but mainly cloudy skies are expected too. Looking at the details then, a cloudy morning expected across southwest England. Perhaps a few bright or sunny spells developing as we head towards lunchtime. Highs of about 8 Celsius with light winds for all. Grey skies overhead London and southeast of England too. It should remain dry though, feeling chilly with highs of 7. Winds remaining pretty light. Wales should see some of the brightest weather. Cloud will come and go, but there will be sunny spells, staying pretty chilly though. The Midlands largely cloudy, should stay dry. There could be a few glimmers of sunshine from time to time. Temperatures just about 6, winds remaining light throughout. Large amounts of cloud across northern England, the best of any cloud breaks to the east of the Pennines. Temperatures towards the coast about 8 Celsius. Patchy rain and brisk winds will continue across northwest Scotland through the day. Drier conditions are expected elsewhere with some sunshine in the east. Maximum temperatures of about 7 Celsius. Now, moving on to Northern Ireland, should remain dry through the rest of the morning. Some bright or sunny breaks developing by lunchtime. Temperatures of about 7 Celsius and the winds will stay pretty light. Often cloudy through the rest of the day across the UK. Rain and strong winds continuing across northwest Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to 9:27. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We were talking about body cams at A&E before. Lawrence has been in touch. Oh, Lawrence, I like you. He says, I was a police officer for 30 years. If I got a call to the A&E of an abusive or violent patient or visitor, then they were going straight into the back of my van at terminal velocity unless there was a valid excuse or legitimate reason for their actions. Yeah.
Yep, shouldn't be allowed, absolutely. Zero tolerance, I think.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I love that sort of attitude.
You turn up to hospital for help, basically. That's why you go to hospital. And then you're abusive to the staff. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
Sometimes a no-nonsense approach is what's needed.
Yeah, it is,
I
actually.
think.
Yeah.
Might not be popular, but...
No, well, I think it would be popular amongst an awful lot of people, and particularly amongst your A&E staff who have to put up with rubbish from people. They shouldn't. They're there to do a job. Let them do it.
Let's return to the issue of Ukraine, should we? We were discussing earlier with the former Foreign Secretary, Lord Owen.
Yeah, basically, Russia has moved over 100,000 troops to the Ukraine border, but denies that it's planning an invasion. Odd. Doesn't seem that Foreign Secretary Liz Truss believes it, though, insisting that Russia must de-escalate, end its campaigns of aggression and disinformation, and pursue a path of diplomacy.
Well, let's talk to the former head of the British Army, General Lord Dannett. Good morning to you. I mean, strategically, where do you think we are at the moment in terms of what sort of role, if any, the British Army is going to play in this?
Well, as far as the British Army is concerned, we are playing our part as a member of NATO. There are a small number of British troops in Ukraine, but they're there largely to explain and train the weaponry that we have given to the Ukrainians. Other British troops are part of the NATO forward deployments in Estonia and Poland. But I think the big point to bear in mind is really just what Putin's objective is and what Putin's attitude is. We have to remember that scrape him to the core and you find an unreconstructed KGB colonel whose beloved Warsaw Pact and Soviet Union was destroyed by the cohesion of the West in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down. And what he would like to achieve more than anything else is to sow discord and doubt amongst the minds of NATO members and break up that cohesion of NATO. That's what he would like really his epitaph to be, the man who destroyed NATO. So the way he's going about it is by, as we're seeing at the present moment, massing a large number of troops on the Russian-Ukrainian border and threatening to invade. Now, I personally don't believe that he will invade in a classic sort of military incursion type way, but he is there to threaten and to cause dissent amongst NATO because he would like to see a breaking of the ranks within NATO. That's his objective, and that's what our diplomats have got to keep in mind.
And it's a pretty awful prospect for the people, ordinary people living in the Ukraine, isn't it? Because by the look of it, it's just going to be continued tension and standoffs.
Yes, I mean, it's a very uncomfortable place to be. But again, I think you have to bear in mind that we are slightly reaping some of the things that we have sown. After the end of the Cold War, quite properly, the West held out its hand to the Eastern European countries that had been Soviet-dominated. But bear in mind, they didn't choose to become Soviet-dominated. They were countries that were captured by the Red Army in the campaigns of 1943, 44, 45, and then went under the communist heel, under communist domination. But Ukraine is different. Ukraine, dare I say it, is a little bit like Wales is to England. Ukraine was very much part of Greater Russia. Yes, of course, it was part of the Soviet Union. But Khrushchev, for example, that Soviet leader, he was from Ukraine. To many Russians, Ukraine not being part of Greater Russia is unthinkable. And I think the West was probably not unwise to bring the former Eastern European countries into Partnership for Peace and into NATO. But we've held back from bringing Ukraine into NATO. And I think that is wise, because I think that's a provocation greater than the Kremlin would be prepared to put up with.
What did you make of what President Biden has said in his latest comments? I mean, what one reporter said, well, are you suggesting a small invasion could take place and nothing would happen? But, I mean, President Biden seems to be implying that he's watching his words very carefully because he doesn't want to split any support within NATO.
Well, as far as that's concerned, he is right to do all that he can to prevent splits within NATO, going back to the point that I was making a moment or two ago. But of course, part of the problem of why we are where we are is the weak leadership that the West has had really for quite some time now, starting back with President Obama, going through the uncertainties of President Trump, and now the very weak leadership we're seeing from President Biden. The West needs strong leadership. The United States is the world's only superpower still, and it's the United States that really does need to give leadership to the West. So the uncertain sounds that we have heard over the last 10 years from Washington haven't helped the West cause. And of course, give great comfort to Putin, who's now been the Russian leader for getting on for 20 years. He's grown in confidence. He's grown in the strength of his own leadership at the time when the West is lacking in leadership. And this is actually a serious issue. And I think it's right that the UK government is making, I think, fairly strong noises to say that the West must stand up for itself and face Mr. Putin down.
But for the people watching at the moment who are maybe the families of serving British soldiers, do they have anything to fear? Might we put boots on the ground, or do you think that is absolutely not going to happen?
I don't see us putting a significant number of British boots on the ground in Ukraine if the Russians were to make an incursion. The Ukrainian army is relatively strong, nothing like as strong as the Russian army. Over the years, it's been built up in terms of training and equipment. I mean, if there was to be an incursion, it'll be the Ukrainians that will need to defend themselves, and it will be very bloody and very messy. But it's the Ukrainians' fight. It's not a fight that I would expect to see British soldiers getting involved in. Yes, as I've already said, we are taking part in other forward deployments in Estonia and in Poland, and that is right to show the Russians that NATO is standing amongst its membership shoulder to shoulder, and that the West does mean business. But I wouldn't expect to see British soldiers fighting and dying in Ukraine.
No, can I just ask you though? I know for a fact there are army bases tuned into GBNews this morning, and I'm an army spouse, and you're an army mom. And,
yeah.
You know, what would you say to the families, but more importantly to the troops who are watching right now, have been told they may be put on 48-hour standby or whatever it is at the moment? What would you say to them as they brace themselves for what may come in the next couple of weeks?
I would say that they will continue to do their duty in the way that they've been trained to. I would urge them, of course, to trust their own leadership within the military, and it's up to the chiefs of staff to continue discussions with our own political leaders to make sure that the UK does the right thing and that decisions that we take are appropriate, such as sending weaponry and trainers to Ukraine, but resisting the possibility of British troops, British combat units going forward into Ukraine and taking part in countering a Russian incursion. That is the Ukrainians' responsibility, up to us to support them. But bear in mind the original point that I was making, that Putin's desire is not so much to invade and capture the whole of Ukraine, which would be a very considerable undertaking, even for the Russians. But actually, it's to cause dissent and disharmony within NATO and see the cohesion of NATO breaking up. That's what he would like to achieve more than anything else.
General Lord Dannatt, so it's a pleasure, privilege to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. And coming up, Stephanie and Aidan will bring you all the latest showbiz and sports, and there's plenty of that around. Do stay with us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Well, over a drink, we have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It's 9:38. If you're heading out the door right now, you don't have to leave us. Just switch your radio on and you can keep listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, because we are live across the UK on your TV.
Yeah, you can do it on your app.
Radio.
I was doing the housework yesterday. I actually do housework occasionally. Very rarely, but I did.
On.
But I just carried my phone around with me and I listened on the app all the time. It's really good. Yeah.
It is good. It makes good listening, actually. If I say so myself.
Yes, that's it. If you don't blow your own trumpet, who's going to?
My mother says self-praise is no praise at all.
Oh, no, you've got to blow your own trumpet, I say.
There you go. Let's have a look at the newspapers for you. The Sunday Times has an exclusive with a Muslim Conservative MP accusing the party whip of telling her she was fired from her ministerial job in 2020 because of her religion.
The Sunday Express reveal their own poll, finding that 72% of respondents want Prince Andrew to be stripped of his Duke title.
An interview with Tony Blair in The Independent has the former PM calling for the Labour Party to capitalise on their recent successes, although their successes is someone else leaving the Tories.
Yes, it's not quite their successes, really, is it?
No.
According to the Mail on Sunday, Boris Johnson and some senior government officials are clashing goodness me, over civil servants returning to work in offices rather than from home.
The Prime Minister has accused Russia of setting up a puppet regime under Putin in Ukraine. That's in the Sunday Telegraph this morning.
And meanwhile, the Sunday Mirror says Katie Price could face jail time for breaking the terms of her restraining order.
People will starve. That's a headline in the Sunday People. It warns a cost of living crisis is going to continue to get worse.
It's quite political for the people, isn't it? The Observer reports that Sue Gray, the senior civil servant investigating the alleged lockdown parties at Downing Street, has analysed swipe card data of staff who attended any event.
The Star, Daily Star Sunday, gives Geordies some good news. If you're up there in the northeast, you are apparently the most prepared people in Britain for a possible apocalyptic event.
So if you've got a friend up there, then you're well off. Go and stay with them.
But it's just like...
If you see the apocalypse coming.
What apocalypse?
I know, well...
What are you doing?
We don't know about it yet. We'll try and find out for you when it's going to happen. Get us an apocalyptic expert.
We'll let you know, and you can listen to us on the radio as you all drive to the northeast.
Yes, and eat pot noodles for the next 10 years.
Oh, that sounds nice, though.
Now, the Duke of York was stripped of his title as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards earlier this month by the Queen. And now, apparently, the Guards say they know who they want to take over, and it's the Duchess of Cambridge.
She would be the first female colonel in the regiment's 366-year history. A senior source told The Times, "We all admire the way she's fitted in and behaved. She never seems to put a foot wrong. Everything she's taken on, she really commits to, and we want someone who will really engage with us." And if you do it right, because silver stick for the household cavalry is Princess Anne.
Yes.
And she is so highly regarded.
Hugely admired.
So respected by
And she takes
the
it
troops.
very seriously.
Yeah.
But sorry to be a bit girly about it, but wouldn't Kate look good in the uniform too? So is that too girly? I'm sorry.
Well, it's a fair point.
Yeah.
It's a fair point, I guess.
Military outfits look wonderful on people, don't they? And it would look something on her.
Now, I don't know who this person is.
No, I don't. Apprentice star Navid Soleil?
Soleil? I don't know.
Don't watch it. You're allowed to say that at all? You don't watch The Apprentice?
No, I don't want any of that sort of stuff. The reality... It's
all about the money.
The reality stuff, I don't care about.
No, but I've never liked The Apprentice because it's all about making money.
Yeah.
And it's like nothing else. They just worship the making of money. And they're also ghastly, aren't they? I mean, some of the older ones aren't too bad. I have to be careful what I say here.
Yes, you do a little
I do,
bit.
don't I? But some of the apprentices are pretty horrible.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Ghastly.
Anyway, Mr. Soleil claims he was bullied throughout his short time on the show. He was booted off pretty quick, I imagine. Producers ignoring his cries for help. The 27-year-old said one contestant called him a snake and a clown after a failed task in the first episode. Well...
Yeah, well, if you go on The Apprentice, that's what happens, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, there is a sort of pseudo-bullying, anyway.
Two or three times he wanted to hurt himself because he didn't know what to do.
Well, the BBC, of course, have denied his claims. We'll see what happens, but there you are, those sort of things that go on in The Apprentice. And all reality shows, actually, don't they?
Well, yeah, they are brutal, but that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, we don't watch them, but I know who does.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Stephanie Tetchy.
Yes, I am.
Do you watch all of
Do you watch The Apprentice?
I do like The Apprentice fan because, The Apprentice show, because it's so fun to see them on the different tasks that they put on, and it's really quite catty. So I'm not surprised that he's come out with comments like that. But it is one of those things, it's the survival of the fittest.
But the producers stir it
Yeah,
up,
and,
don't they?
he's kind of hinting that he didn't win the show because it's like you can't be kind of showing those kind of attributes. Like Lord Alan Sugar wants to see who's fit for the job, but at the same time, with all reality TV shows, you have to take these claims of bullying quite seriously because it does affect people's mental health. And I know we can sit here and be like, he could, just brush it off his shoulder, but if he felt that way that he was bullied, then the BBC have a task on their hands where they do have to investigate it and make sure that they look at it quite properly.
Oh, yeah.
It could be blown out of proportion as well.
Could be. You're trying to get a bit of
headline.
Oh, we are cynics, aren't we?
We are being terrible today.
Been in this business too long. What have you got for us, showbiz-wise, this morning,
well,
Stephanie?
Adele, you know, she's cancelled her 24-day Las Vegas residency, but she's still raking in the money, guys. So, like, Damage Control, she's been FaceTiming fans, telling them, apologising to them, which obviously appears lovely. But she puts in a cheeky little plug for her merchandise and saying, still go to the shop and you can still buy stuff. Well, guys, you can get a bottle of Adele wine for £55.
Ouch.
You can get...
Does she have her own winery?
Yeah, she's done it for the show. £55 a bottle of wine with Adele's face on it. You can get a T-shirt for £33 and you can get socks for £11.50. So
yeah, but you know what? It might be an investment because if you get the merch for the tour that never was, not that many people will have it.
Yeah. So she's still going to be...
Apparently she's still raking it in because people are buying that merchandise,
They are,
aren't they?
because, you know, for the fans that have gone to Las Vegas, what else can they do? To get a little bit of Adele, they're going to be going to the store and
I went to Las Vegas, bought this T-shirt, never saw Adele.
No. Well, she's still got a dent in her account because she was set to make £500,000 a night. So compared to what she'll be making from the merchandise, a night.
And 3 nights in a weekend.
I don't get it. I don't get where all this money's coming from.
Well, I'd love to know what Caesar's Palace think about it as well. They've booked her to be their big draw, and she's not going to be there.
They're not. Well, they've not said anything as far as I know yet.
They must take out an enormous insurance policy against things like this happening.
They're probably planning her big comeback. But someone who's not having a bit of a comeback at the moment is Katie Price. Obviously, she's on the front pages of most of the newspapers today for breaching her restraining order against her her ex-husband's fiancé. And I've been looking at the Twitter and GBNews, and a lot of viewers have been saying it's time that the police threw the book at her, basically. But they were saying she'll get away with it. They're saying it's one rule for us and one rule for the famous. And this week, Katie's new show, Mucky Mansion, is supposed to be on Channel 4. And some viewers are like, no, it should get pulled. It should get cancelled, which I don't think it will.
It won't.
It won't.
It's like I said earlier, it's almost, it doesn't matter what she does, it just makes her more famous.
Yeah.
And her fans love her.
No such thing as bad publicity.
Almost, yeah.
It almost makes me think, when is her luck going to run out, you know?
Well, she has suffered a lot of bad luck.
Yeah.
But she plays it out in the media and she makes it work for her somehow.
It's quite a toxic relationship between the media and Katie Price because it's like she always feeds us all these good showbiz stories, but then when you really break it down and see what she's doing, you're like, no, it's not right.
It's almost an abusive relationship,
and
isn't
she's
it?
got a lot of influential young women who follow her, and I'm like, we kind of glamorising or take, you know, mickey of what she's doing, but actually what she's doing is quite wrong, and it's setting a wrong example. And she's a mother of 5 as well, so her poor children as well.
Which marriage is it that she's on now?
She's about to go on her 6th marriage.
But do you know, she is the breadwinner.
Yeah.
And she knows that's her job, really.
Yeah.
She sees it as her job. Everything has to make money or she isn't the breadwinner, but she has to keep that family going and the big house and the cars and the lifestyle.
And she gets lots of magazine deals, so everything she does is always going to sell papers or magazines or the show she does. So Katie Price is one lucky woman.
Yeah, she is.
I don't think she's necessarily happy, though, all the time.
The two don't go hand in hand, do they? And you, Harry Styles has got 75 million quid to burn.
He has, and he's going to be spending 10 million of it in Cornwall. He had a lovely winter staycation there. Nice seclusion, lucky for some. And apparently he's now set his sights on investing on a property there. I don't know how it's going to go because I know the 1D fans and Harry Styles fans, they're very dedicated. Wherever Harry goes, they will follow. That's
you, isn't it? How did you count outside his house, I know.
How do you know?
He's told me you're always there.
I've got a nice selfie of me and Harry together about 3 years ago. I was in an interview with him and he was holding my phone. I was like, oh, yes, I am a big Harry fan. But I don't know how it's going to go down in Cornwall. I think, you know, it's quite peaceful up there. And, you know, once you get a celebrity in town...
He'll go for somewhere very private and remote behind very, very big gates, probably with a helipad.
But I'm sure they'll find out where.
They will. They will. You guarantee they will. Lovely. Stephanie, thank you. Don't get away, because you might have some more to throw into the sport. You never know.
I know. I want
Showbiz.
hear what Aidan's got to say? Yeah, it's a beautiful marriage.
Oh, it is a beautiful marriage. And before we go to the sport, don't forget we've got the political correction up next with Michael Portillo, Arlene Foster and Paul Embry. That's all to go. That'll be fun, actually.
There's nothing to talk about, is there, for them? Gosh.
They'll never squeeze it all in.
I tell you what, though, Aidan's here with the sport. Talk about paying, what, £22 for a T-shirt for Adele. I mean, footballers have always charged rather more than that.
Yeah, they have.
Haven't they?
Oh, yeah, without doubt. I mean, having said that, though, it's a bit of a myth that parents have to buy all these kits every few months for kids. Most football shirts, historically, are sold in adult sizes. So it's adults trying to kind of, push the blame on, it's the kids who are creating the demand. It's not. It's grown men. I buy a QPR shirt every summer, I have to say.
How much does that cost?
£42. And the thing is, they change it every season now. When I was a kid, it would be every 2 years.
Yeah.
So if you got one at Christmas, you had the expectation that it would last for another 18 months. I buy one at the start of the season now to put some money into the club. So I don't pay for a lot of QPR these days, I must admit.
Yeah.
So it's a way of putting some money into the club. They also gave some of the proceeds to Grenfell 5 years ago, because it happened just down the road from Queen's Park Rangers. But you mentioned the apocalypse. Geordie apocalypse.
Do you know when it's going to happen?
Well, yeah, it happened yesterday. They won Newcastle won 1-0 against Leeds United. Their second win in 21 matches. This is the richest football club in the world. It didn't actually happen in Newcastle, though. They actually won away from home against Leeds United. So a late goal by John Joe Shelby gave them a little bit of relief. It was important they won because Norwich won the previous day at Watford, and they've given themselves a little bit of a fighting chance, a little bit of a glimmer of hope of staying up as well. But a huge day elsewhere in football. We touched on it last hour, didn't we? Lots of different problems. The drone camera above Brentford's community stadium, just hovering above the air. Lots of fans and obviously players and officials didn't realise that it was actually amounting to a security breach. So the players were taken off for 25 minutes, and then they had to warm up again when they came back on, because obviously
very disruptive, isn't it?
Absolutely. The game did get played and Brentford lost 2-1. But yeah, given the proximity of the stadium to Heathrow as well, it was more challenging than anyone first realised.
It's spooky when you see a drone.
Yeah, but you just think it's someone being nosy, wanting a free ticket.
Well, they're controlled quite remotely. They can be controlled remotely. So there's every possibility that the owner of that drone or the control of the drone won't be known to us. But it's a difficult day elsewhere as well. I mean, there were bottles thrown at Goodison Park, at Everton. Everton came out last night immediately after the game and said they would be trying to identify the culprits with the help of the police and CCTV.
That's like a return to the bad old days, isn't it?
Well, arrests are actually up in the last season or so. Since fans came back at the start of the season, the number of arrests for public disorder offences are actually up, which we've not seen in a long, long time. I don't know what the dynamics are affecting that. Maybe just clubs spend so much money these days that they... Arsene Wenger said to me years ago, he said soon the Premier League will be 20 billionaires, but 3 of them will still be in the bottom 3. Yeah. And so I'm ready to go down. So money isn't a guarantee of success, and when you don't get it, it generates frustration among supporters, and maybe we're seeing some of that as well. But big day ahead today as well, I should say. Chelsea are playing against Tottenham, 4:30. Liverpool, 2 o'clock against Crystal Palace. A glimmer of hope for them yesterday because Manchester City dropped 2 points down at Southampton. If they win their 2 games in hand, they go within 6 points of Manchester City. They have to play Manchester City as well. They could, in theory, cut that to 3. And who knows, 3 points difference between now and the end of or start of May. That could be decisive between now and then.
Are you going to watch any of the matches today?
No, not today. I was going to go to Coventry yesterday to watch Queen's Park Rangers. There was an incident there as well. The steward took ill. 16-minute delay there, but I couldn't get there because I was working here quite late.
Sorry about that.
I had a hospitality seat. I was going to have it for 70 quid.
Oh,
bargain.
Is that a bargain?
Three-course meal.
Oh.
Three-course meal. Balcony seat. I like a padded seat as well. I like a little bit of comfort when I'm
Quite right. When you get to a certain age, Aidan.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still young yet. No, plenty of life. And by the way, couldn't do military uniform today, but I went for a woolly.
No, I like the waistcoat. Very nice waistcoat.
You've got to post a picture of yourself in your QPR top on Twitter.
Yeah,
that's a goal for you.
That's an order.
And Stephanie, you have got to get rid of that drone that you've been flying over Harry Styles' house.
Yes. That's not going to happen.
No, I bet not. Lovely. It's good to see you both this morning. Thank you. Let's just run through a couple of views.
I was just going to say thank you so much for getting in touch today. It's been an avalanche of people watching from all over the world, which has been fantastic.
Which is lovely. Where's that...
What? Which one?
I was trying to find the one where there was loads of people for yet more of the French Riviera. There you go, Michelle. Morning to you. And what else have we got? Anne says about Jeremy Corbyn getting the whip back, which he hasn't done yet, but it might happen. Anne says, I can't believe someone wants Corbyn back. What on earth is that man thinking? Well, being Keir Starmer. Well, he's not actually saying he's going to do it yet.
Rachel says, in October, I met Tom Harwood at the Conservative Party conference. We had a good chat for 5 minutes and it was lovely.
Oh, he's a very friendly young man. He's a young man. How old are you, Aidan?
44.
44. All right.
Yeah, just turned in October.
Yeah,
I look
44.
I look older.
No, you don't look older.
You're a baby. You're a baby. Now, this is a good one. Carl says, why doesn't Boris just call a general election now? Letting the public decide his fate would be far better than letting his enemies do so.
It's an interesting point, but do you remember when there was the election in 2017 and there was that woman interviewed she appeared on all the news channels just saying, not another one.
Oh, yes, that's right. Oh, yeah. People do get a bit fed up with elections.
It's hard work. Over the Russia thing, Mark says all Putin does is switch off the gas, but he might hike the prices.
Yeah, no, he won't switch it off. He'll just up the price as well. Whoever thought it was a great idea for us to buy our gas from Russia?
Interesting. Jerry says, why are old people deciding the future of the young? People like Lord Owen, who we're talking to, why are they deciding if we send the young to fight? Well, I mean, being in a military family, I understand your point of view, but, of course, it's the age and the experience and the knowledge that these older people have.
Of course, one hopes,
which is... I mean, he was, very impressive on his, and he's 83.
Yeah, absolutely. Jackie says, next time I have to go to the doctor, I'm going to ask if they've been fully jabbed. If not, I'll ask for someone else to do the treatment. If we all did the same thing, the message would get through.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. Keep your thoughts coming through. We love to hear them. gbviews@gbnews.uk. The political correction is up next with Michael Portillo, Arlene Foster and Paul Embrook.
Yeah, thanks for staying with us. It's been great.
And it's largely dry for many of us, but mainly cloudy skies are expected too. Looking at the details then, a cloudy morning expected across southwest England. Perhaps a few bright or sunny spells developing as we head towards lunchtime. Highs of about 8 Celsius with light winds for all. Grey skies overhead London and southeast of England too. It should remain dry though, feeling chilly with highs of 7. Winds remaining pretty light. Wales should see some of the brightest weather. Cloud will come and go, but there will be sunny spells, staying pretty chilly though. The Midlands largely cloudy, should stay dry. There could be a few glimmers of sunshine from time to time. Temperatures just about 6.